Chapter 1. The scent of wildflowers and roasted venison should have brought comfort, but instead it felt suffocating. I pressed myself against the cold marble pillar at the edge of the Moonstone Pack's grand pavilion, willing my body to become invisible. Tonight was the harvest moon gathering, the night when unmated wolves from allied packs came together, when bonds were supposedly revealed by the moon goddess herself, when futures were decided. I didn't want to be here. My name is Alara Whitmore, and I am nothing special. At 22, I'm considered late for bonding. My wolf, Nyx, is small and gray, unremarkable compared to the sleek, powerful wolves of higher-ranked families. My parents died when I was 16 in a rogue attack, leaving me with only my grandmother's cottage on the outskirts of pack territory and a small inheritance that keeps me fed but little else. I work in the pack's archives, a dusty job that suits me perfectly. Books don't judge. History doesn't mock. The dead don't care that I'm quiet, awkward, that I've never quite fit into the social hierarchies that govern pack life. The pavilion blazed with torches, their flames casting dancing shadows across the assembled wolves. Unmated females wore flowing dresses in shades of silver and blue, their hair adorned with moonflowers. They clustered in the center, laughing, preening, their confidence radiating like heat. Then there were the males, alphas and betas, their powerful frames and commanding presence making the air feel heavier. They circled the females like predators assessing prey, their eyes calculating, measuring worth. I stayed in my corner, wearing a simple gray dress that had belonged to my mother. It was outdated, plain, but it was mine. I had come only because attendance was mandatory for all unmated wolves under 25. I had no illusions that anyone would choose me. "Look at her, hiding like a frightened mouse," a familiar voice sneered. I didn't need to turn to know it was Vivian Blackthorn, daughter of the pack's beta. She had made my life miserable since we were children, always finding new ways to remind me of my lowly status. "Maybe she's hoping no one will notice her," another girl tittered. I kept my eyes down, my fingers tracing the worn silver bracelet on my wrist, my grandmother's last gift before she passed 2 years ago. "Strength comes in many forms, little star," she used to say. "The quietest streams run deepest." The ceremony began with Elder Morthen's blessing, his ancient voice carrying across the pavilion as he called upon the moon goddess to guide the bonds. Then, one by one, the choosing started. An alpha from the Ironwood pack stepped forward, calling out a name. A beautiful blonde wolf from our pack practically floated toward him, her face glowing with triumph. The crowd erupted in howls of celebration. It continued like this: names called, matches made, futures secured. The group of unmated females thinned. Some were chosen by alphas they'd dreamed of, others by lesser betas they'd settle for. Some tried to hide their disappointment. I watched it all with a strange detachment, as if observing a ritual from another lifetime. Then the energy in the pavilion shifted. A hush fell over the crowd, starting from the entrance and rippling outward like a stone dropped in still water. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the most confident alpha straightened, their casual dominance faltering. He had arrived. Alpha Kale Stormborn, ruler of the Northern Territories and High Commander of the Five-Pack Alliance. I had never seen him in person, only heard the stories whispered with a mixture of reverence and fear. They said he was cursed. They said his fated mate had died before he could find her, leaving him with an incomplete bond that slowly poisoned his soul. They said his rage was legendary, that he'd once torn apart an entire rogue pack single-handedly after they attacked a border village. They said he attended these gatherings out of duty, but had never chosen anyone in the 7 years since his mate's supposed death. I risked a glance toward the entrance. He stood like a monument carved from shadow and stone. Tall, easily over 6.5 feet, with broad shoulders that seemed to fill the archway. His hair was black as midnight, falling just past his collar. His face was all sharp angles and harsh planes, handsome in a brutal, unforgiving way. But it was his eyes that stole my breath, ice blue, like winter frost, scanning the crowd with an intensity that felt physical. Power radiated from him in waves. Pure, undiluted alpha dominance that made my wolf whimper and press low in my mind. He wore black leather and dark steel, no pack colors, no ceremonial finery. He didn't need it. Everyone knew who he was. He took his place on the raised platform reserved for the highest-ranking alphas, his movements fluid and precise. He sat on what looked like a throne made of dark wood and iron, his posture relaxed but somehow still predatory. His gaze swept over the remaining unmated females with cold disinterest. The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Now there was tension and anticipation. Would the cursed alpha finally choose? More matches were made. The crowd of unmated females dwindled to a handful. Then there was only one left. A pretty omega named Iris who stood alone in the center, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She had been so confident earlier, so certain she would be chosen by someone of status. An older beta, gruff and scarred, stepped forward and called her name. She hesitated, clearly hoping for something better, but finally walked toward him with her head held as high as shame would allow. It was over. I had not been called. Of course I hadn't. Relief flooded through me, sharp and sweet. I could leave now, return to my cottage, to my solitude, to my books and my garden where I belonged. I turned to slip away through the back entrance, moving slowly, quietly, just another shadow retreating from the light. Stop! The single word cut through the noise like a blade. It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The voice carried absolute command, resonating with alpha power that made every wolf present freeze instinctively. My body locked in place before my mind could process the order. The pavilion fell silent. Utterly, completely silent. Footsteps, measured, deliberate, echoed across the marble floor. They were getting closer, coming toward the back where I stood frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. Turn around. The voice was closer now, right behind me. Deep, rough, like stone grinding against stone. My body obeyed before I could think. I turned slowly, my eyes fixed on the ground, seeing only black boots, leather pants, the hem of a dark coat. Look at me. I couldn't. Fear had locked my muscles, stolen my breath. This couldn't be happening. There had to be a mistake. I said, look at me. The alpha command in those words was irresistible. My head lifted as if pulled by invisible strings, my eyes traveling up, until they met his. Ice blue. Winter frost. A frozen lake that could crack and swallow you whole. Alpha Kale Stormborn stood before me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his massive frame, close enough to smell pine and snow and something wild and dangerous. His eyes locked onto mine, and the world tilted. A sensation exploded through my chest, a golden thread snapping into place, connecting me to him, binding us together with a force that felt older than time itself. My wolf surged forward with a desperate, joyous howl I had never heard her make before. Mate, mate, mate. No, this couldn't be happening. This was impossible. His eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise on his otherwise stone-carved face. His nostrils flared as he breathed in my scent, and something flickered in those frozen eyes. Recognition, shock, and something darker that made my skin prickle. The bond thrummed between us, golden and unbreakable, singing a song of completion that made my entire being ache with longing. He stared at me for what felt like an eternity, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. The entire pavilion watched in stunned silence, hundreds of eyes boring into us. Then Alpha Kale Stormborn, High Commander of the Five-Pack Alliance, spoke two words that shattered my world. I reject. No. The word tore from my throat before I could stop it, loud and desperate in the suffocating silence. My hand flew up, palm out, as if I could physically stop what was coming. He paused, his ice blue eyes narrowing dangerously. Please, I whispered, my voice breaking. Don't do this here. Not like this. Something in his expression shifted. A flicker of what might have been respect, or perhaps just curiosity at my unexpected defiance. The crowd erupted in whispers, shock rippling through the pavilion. The cursed alpha had found his second-chance mate, and she had just dared to interrupt his rejection. His gaze held mine for another long moment, and I saw the war playing out behind those cold eyes. Duty, pain, fury, and something else I couldn't name. Finally, he spoke, his voice pitched low enough that only I could hear. Come to the Northern Territory in 3 days. I'll give you that much. Then he turned and walked away, his massive frame cutting through the crowd like a blade. They parted before him, heads bowing, submission automatic. I stood there, trembling, the mate bond screaming in my chest as he put distance between us. Every step he took felt like a knife twisting in my heart. He was going to reject me. He'd given me 3 days, but the outcome was already decided. As the crowd began to whisper and stare, as Vivian's cruel laughter rang out from somewhere in the chaos, I did the only thing I could do. I ran. Chapter 2. The forest welcomed me with open arms, its darkness a comfort after the blazing lights of the pavilion. I ran until my lungs burned, until the sounds of the gathering faded to nothing, until the only thing I could hear was my own ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. I didn't stop until I reached my cottage, a small stone structure nestled at the edge of packed territory where the forest grows thick and wild. It had been my grandmother's and her mother's before that, a place for healers, for those who preferred the quiet company of herbs and old knowledge to the politics of pack life. I stumbled through the door and slammed it shut, my hands shaking so violently I could barely throw the bolt. Then I collapsed against the rough wood, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor, and I let the tears come. Mate. The word echoed through my mind, through my very soul. The bond thrummed in my chest like a second heartbeat, golden and insistent and utterly unwanted. Cale Stormborn was my mate, the cursed alpha, the most powerful wolf in the territories. And he was going to reject me. 3 days. He'd given me 3 days before he would tear this bond apart and leave me broken. Nyx whimpered in my mind, confused and hurt. She didn't understand why our mate had looked at us with such cold fury, why he'd started to speak words of rejection before I'd begged him to stop. Because we're nothing, I whispered into the empty cottage, my voice cracking. We're a nobody from a nothing family. We work in dusty archives. We live alone in the forest. What would the High Commander want with someone like us? But even as I said it, I felt the bond pulling at me, singing a different song. It didn't care about status or power or worthiness. It simply was a connection forged by something greater than any of us, a recognition that went soul deep. I pulled myself up and lit the oil lamps with trembling fingers. The cottage flickered to life around me. Rough-hewn furniture, shelves lined with jars of dried herbs, my grandmother's old books on healing stacked in precarious towers. The hearth was cold, the fire long dead. I should light it. I should make tea. I should do something normal, something grounding. Instead, I walked to the window and stared out at the dark forest, my hand pressed against my chest where the bond burned like a brand. 3 days. I could run. I could pack a bag and disappear into the wilderness, become a rogue, live off the land as my grandmother had taught me. The bond would hurt, would drive me slowly mad with distance and incompletion, but maybe it would be better than facing his rejection. Better than standing before him while he spoke the words that would sever us forever. But even as the thought formed, I knew I wouldn't do it. I wasn't brave enough to run, but I also wasn't weak enough to simply accept my fate without understanding it first. If Cale Stormborn was going to reject me, I wanted to know why. I wanted to look him in the eyes and hear the reason. I wanted to understand what was so wrong with me that even the moon goddess's choice wasn't enough. And maybe, just maybe, a small, foolish part of me hoped I could change his mind. A sharp knock on the door shattered my thoughts. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. Had he followed me? Had he come to finish what he started? To reject me in private where there would be no witnesses to my humiliation? Another knock, more insistent. I crept to the door, my hand hovering over the bolt. Who is it? Elara, it's me. Open up. I recognized the voice, Marcus, the pack's head warrior, and one of the few wolves who had shown me kindness over the years. He'd been friends with my father before the attack that killed him. I opened the door a crack. Marcus stood on my doorstep, his weathered face creased with concern. He was in his 50s, gray streaking through his brown hair, his body still strong despite his age. His eyes were kind. May I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered, his large frame making my small cottage feel even smaller. He looked around, taking in the cold hearth, the scattered books, my tear-stained face. You ran, he said simply. I couldn't stay there. Everyone was staring. Vivian was laughing. I wrapped my arms around myself. I couldn't. Marcus nodded slowly. The alpha left immediately after you did. Didn't say a word to anyone, just walked out. Elder Morthan is in an uproar. The other alphas are confused. The whole pack is buzzing with speculation. I don't care what they think. Maybe you should. Marcus moved to the hearth and began building a fire with practiced efficiency. Whether you like it or not, you're now connected to the most powerful alpha in the territories. What happens between you two will affect more than just your life. I sank into my grandmother's old rocking chair, watching him work. He's going to reject me. He said that. He started to. I stopped him. Asked him not to do it in front of everyone. I laughed bitterly. He gave me 3 days. As if that changes anything. Marcus struck flint to tinder, and flames began to lick at the kindling. Alpha Kale is complicated. The stories about him aren't wrong, exactly, but they're not complete either. Tell me. I leaned forward. Please. If I'm going to face him in 3 days, I need to understand who he is. Marcus settled onto the floor in front of the growing fire, his expression troubled. Kale Stormborn became Alpha at 19 when his father died in battle against a rival pack. He was young, untested, and the Northern Territory was in chaos. But he proved himself quickly, ruthless when he needed to be, strategic, fair in his judgments. He united the scattered packs under his rule and brought peace to the region. And his mate, Marcus's face grew somber. Her name was Lyria. They found each other when they were both 17, young for a mate bond, but not unheard of. By all accounts, they were devoted to each other. But she was human, Alara. A human living in a border village that fell under Northern Territory protection. My breath caught. A human mate was rare, considered a blessing by some and a curse by others. The moon goddess's choices were not always understood. What happened to her? She died 2 years before Kale became Alpha. A rogue attack on her village. She was helping evacuate children when a building collapsed. She was killed instantly. Marcus stared into the flames. They say Kale found her body in the rubble. They say he held her for 3 days straight, wouldn't let anyone near, wouldn't eat, wouldn't shift, wouldn't speak. When he finally emerged, something in him had broken. But if she died before they completed the bond? Exactly. Marcus looked at me. The mate bond was there, recognized, but never fully sealed. It's a rare situation. The connection exists but remains incomplete, leaving the surviving mate in a state of perpetual mourning. Most wolves in that situation go mad or die from the pain. Kale survived, but at a cost. He shut down everything soft in himself, became pure duty and rage. I processed this, my hand unconsciously moving to my chest where the bond hummed. So when the bond snapped into place tonight with me, he felt it, Marcus confirmed. A second chance mate, another rare gift from the moon goddess. But to Kale, it probably feels like a betrayal, like replacing Lyria, like admitting she wasn't enough. I'm not trying to replace anyone, I whispered. I didn't ask for this. Neither did he. Marcus stood, his joints popping. But here you both are, bound by something neither of you wanted. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I looked up at him. What can I do? He's going to reject me. Maybe. Or maybe you surprise him. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. Your grandmother used to say that the strongest wolves aren't the ones who never fall, but the ones who rise after falling. You've been knocked down your whole life, Alara. You're still standing. That's not weakness. After he left, I sat by the fire for hours, watching the flames dance, feeling the bond pulse with every beat of my heart. 3 days to prepare for my own rejection. 3 days to decide if I would face it with dignity or beg for mercy I knew wouldn't come. 3 days to somehow find the strength to survive having my soul torn in half. I pulled out my grandmother's old journal, filled with her careful handwriting, her wisdom on healing and herbs and the old ways. I flipped through the pages until I found what I was looking for. A section on mate bonds. The bond is sacred, she had written. But sacred does not mean easy. The moon goddess sees what we cannot. The potential for growth, for healing, for 2 broken pieces to become whole. She never chooses lightly, and she never makes mistakes. Trust in the bond, little star, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. I traced my fingers over her words, tears blurring my vision. The next 3 days passed in a strange blur of preparation and dread. I threw myself into work at the archives, cataloging ancient texts and organizing records, anything to keep my mind occupied. But the bond wouldn't let me forget, wouldn't let me rest. At night, I dreamed of ice blue eyes and a rejection spoken in a voice like winter. Pack members whispered when they saw me. Some looked at me with pity, others with curiosity, a few with barely concealed contempt. Vivian made sure to cross my path, her smile sharp as knives. Enjoy your 3 days, little mouse, she purred. I'm sure they'll be the most important of your pathetic life. Too bad they're leading nowhere. I ignored her, but her words burrowed under my skin like thorns. On the 3rd morning, I woke before dawn and made my preparations. I bathed in cold water from the well, scrubbing my skin until it was pink. I dressed in my best clothing, a simple dress of deep blue that had belonged to my mother, worn but clean. I braided my hair carefully, weaving in small white flowers from my garden. I wasn't trying to impress him. I just wanted to face my rejection with whatever dignity I could muster. As the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I set out for the Northern Territory. The journey would take most of the day on foot. I didn't own a horse, and I wouldn't ask anyone for help. This was something I had to do alone. The forest path was familiar at first, winding through territory I'd walked my whole life. But as I crossed the boundary markers into neutral lands, the landscape changed. The trees grew taller, older, their branches forming a canopy so thick that the sunlight barely penetrated. The air felt different here, colder, wilder, touched by something ancient and powerful. This was the buffer zone between territories, claimed by no pack, home to rogues and outcasts and creatures best left unnamed. I walked quickly, my heart hammering every time a branch snapped or a bird took flight. I was small, alone, and vulnerable, easy prey for anything hunting these woods. But nothing bothered me. Perhaps the scent of the mate bond protected me, marking me as belonging to the Northern Territory's alpha. Or perhaps I was simply lucky. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, I saw them, stone markers carved with runes, each one taller than a man, forming a circle around the path. The boundary to the Northern Territory. I stepped through and immediately felt the difference. The very air seemed to hum with power, with the presence of the alpha who ruled here. My wolf stirred, recognizing her mate's territory, wanting to run through these woods and find him. I forced her down and kept walking. The path led upward now, climbing into the mountains. My legs burned with exhaustion, my feet ached in my worn boots. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I might lose my nerve entirely. As dusk painted the sky purple and gold, I crested a hill and saw it. The Northern Territory's stronghold. It wasn't a castle, but it might as well have been. Built into the mountainside itself, the structure was a fortress of dark stone and timber, with towers rising toward the sky like claws. Torches blazed along the walls, and I could see warriors patrolling, their silhouettes sharp against the dying light. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. I walked down the path toward the main gates, my heart in my throat. Guards spotted me immediately. 2 massive warriors who stepped into my path, weapons drawn. "State your business," one growled. I lifted my chin, calling on every ounce of courage I possessed. "My name is Alara Whitmore. Alpha Kale is expecting me." They exchanged glances, surprise flickering across their faces. Then the second guard nodded slowly. "Follow me." They led me through the gates into a courtyard bustling with activity. Warriors training, servants carrying supplies, children playing in the fading light. Everyone stopped to stare as I passed, whispers following in my wake. We entered the main hall, a cavernous space with high ceilings supported by massive beams. Torches lined the walls, casting dancing shadows across tapestries depicting battles and hunts. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat a throne carved from a single piece of dark wood. And on that throne sat Kale. He looked exactly as I remembered. Larger than life, carved from shadow and stone, his ice-blue eyes tracking my approach with an intensity that made my breath catch. He wore black leather and fur, a silver chain around his neck bearing the symbol of his pack. His face was unreadable, but I felt his attention on me like a physical weight. The guard who'd escorted me bowed. "Alpha, the Whitmore girl has arrived. Leave us." His voice was quiet but absolute. The guards retreated immediately, and suddenly I was alone with him in the vast hall. The bond thrummed between us, stronger now that we were in the same space. I felt it pulling at me, urging me to go to him, to touch him, to complete what the moon goddess had started. I forced myself to stay still. Kale stood slowly, descending from his throne with the fluid grace of a predator. He walked toward me, each step deliberate, until he was close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "You came," he said. "You gave me 3 days. It's been 3 days." His jaw clenched. Most wolves would have run. I'm not most wolves. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or respect. "No, you're not." We stood there, the air between us crackling with tension and the unseen pull of the bond. I could smell him now. Pine and snow and something wild that made my wolf whine with longing. "Why did you come?" he asked, his voice rough. I met his gaze steadily. "Because I deserve to hear why. If you're going to reject me, I want to know the reason." I I want to understand what's so wrong with me that even the moon goddess's choice isn't enough. His expression shifted, something almost like pain crossing his features before his mask of ice returned. There's nothing wrong with you. Then why? Because I can't do this again. The words exploded from him with shocking violence. He turned away, his massive frame rigid with tension. I can't watch another mate die. I can't feel that bond break a second time. I barely survived it once. I won't survive it again. Understanding crashed over me. You think I'm going to die? Everyone dies. He turned back to me, and for the first time, I saw past the ice in his eyes to the fear beneath. And I'm cursed, Alara. Everyone close to me ends up dead or broken. My father, my mother, my sister, Lyria, all gone. All destroyed by their connection to me. I won't do that to you. That's not your choice to make, I said softly. The moon goddess chose us for each other. Who are you to say she was wrong? I'm the alpha who knows what I am. His voice cracked. I'm poison, Alara. Everything I touch withers. You deserve better than a mate who will only bring you pain. And you deserve better than a life lived in fear. I took a step closer, my heart pounding. You think you're protecting me by rejecting this bond? You're just condemning us both to a half-life of wondering what could have been. Better a half-life than a grave. How do you know? I challenged. How do you know I won't be the one who saves you? How do you know this bond isn't exactly what we both need to heal? He stared at me, his chest heaving, the bond between us singing with possibility and pain. Then he spoke the words I'd been dreading. I, Kale Stormborn, Alpha of the Northern Territory. No. I lunged forward without thinking, my hand covering his mouth, stopping the rejection before it could be completed. Please. Just please. We stood frozen, my hand on his lips, his eyes wide with shock at my audacity. I could feel his breath hot against my palm, could feel the bond screaming at the contact. Give me a chance, I whispered. 1 month. That's all I'm asking. Let me stay here, let us try. If after 1 month you still want to reject me, I won't stop you. But at least we'll know we tried. He reached up slowly and wrapped his large hand around my wrist, pulling my hand away from his mouth. But he didn't let go, his thumb pressing against my racing pulse. 1 month, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. But I'm not promising anything beyond that. Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly collapsed. That's all I'm asking. His eyes searched my face, and I saw the war playing out behind them. Hope and fear, longing and self-preservation, the desperate desire to believe warring with the certainty of loss. You're either very brave or very foolish, he said. Maybe I'm both. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. You can stay in the East Wing. I'll have servants prepare quarters for you. Thank you. He released my wrist and stepped back, and I immediately felt the loss of contact like a physical pain. Don't thank me yet, he said grimly. You have no idea what you've just signed up for. Then he turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the vast hall, my wrists still tingling where he'd touched me, the mate bond humming with tentative, fragile hope. I had 1 month to change the mind of a cursed alpha who was convinced he destroyed everything he touched. 1 month to prove that some bonds were strong enough to survive anything. 1 month to show him that I wasn't afraid of his darkness, because I carried my own. Chapter 3. The East Wing of the Northern Territory stronghold was nothing like my cottage. Where my home was small and warm and filled with the scent of herbs, these quarters were vast and cold, all stone and dark wood and towering ceilings that made me feel even smaller than usual. A servant, a middle-aged woman named Petra with kind eyes and graying hair, had shown me to my rooms. 2 chambers connected by an archway. A sitting room with a massive fireplace and furniture that looked older than my grandmother, and a bedroom dominated by a bed large enough to sleep 4 wolves comfortably. The Alpha has ordered that you be given anything you require, Petra said, lighting candles throughout the rooms. Meals will be brought to you, or you may take them in the main hall if you prefer. There are bathing chambers down the corridor, heated by the mountain springs. If you need clothing or... I have what I need, I interrupted gently. Thank you, Petra. She nodded, studying me with barely concealed curiosity. I couldn't blame her. The rumors must be spreading like wildfire. The cursed Alpha's second chance mate, a nobody from the Moonstone Pack, given 1 month to prove herself worthy. After Petra left, I explored my new temporary home. Someone had already brought in my small bag, the few belongings I'd packed for this journey. A change of clothes, my grandmother's journal, the the silver bracelet I never took off. Everything I owned that mattered could fit in one bag. I stood at the window, looking out over the Northern Territory as night fell completely. Torches blazed throughout the compound, and I could see warriors changing shifts, hear the distant sounds of training yards and pack life continuing despite the late hour. Somewhere in this fortress was Kale, the mate who didn't want me, the alpha convinced he would only bring me death. I pressed my hand against the cold glass, feeling the bond stretch between us like a golden thread, pulling at my heart. 1 month. I had 1 month to break through walls built from grief and fear and 7 years of self-imposed isolation. I didn't know if it was possible, but I had to try. The next morning, I woke to knocking on my door. Petra entered carrying a tray laden with food, fresh bread, butter, honey, eggs, bacon, fruit. More food than I typically ate in 2 days. "The alpha requests your presence in the training yards after you've eaten," she said, setting the tray on a small table. "He says to wear something you can move in." My heart jumped. He wants to see me? Apparently. Petra's expression was neutral, but I caught a flicker of something, concern maybe or pity. "I've laid out some clothing that should fit. They belong to." She trailed off, her face going carefully blank. "To Lyria?" I finished quietly. Petra's silence was answer enough. After she left, I approached the clothing she'd set out. Simple leather pants and a linen tunic, well-made but showing signs of age and disuse. I touched the fabric carefully, trying not to think about the human woman who'd worn these clothes, who'd been Kale's first mate, who'd died before the bond could be completed. Was I truly willing to wear a dead woman's clothing? But I had nothing else suitable for training, and refusing would only delay the inevitable confrontation. I dressed quickly, braided my hair back tightly, and forced myself to eat despite my nervous stomach. Then I made my way through the fortress, following Petra's directions to the training yards. The morning sun was bright and cold as I stepped out into the open air. The training yards were massive, several large courtyards connected by archways, each dedicated to different types of combat. I could see warriors sparring with swords, others practicing hand-to-hand combat, a group of younger wolves learning basic defensive stances. And in the center of it all, commanding attention without even trying, was Kale. He was shirtless despite the cold, his muscular torso gleaming with sweat as he moved through a weapon's drill with deadly precision. He wielded a long sword as if it weighed nothing, his movements fluid and controlled, every muscle in his body working in perfect harmony. He was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. I stood at the edge of the yard, suddenly uncertain. Why had he called me here? To humiliate me in front of his warriors? To prove how weak I was compared to the wolves of the Northern Territory? He must have caught my scent because he stopped mid-swing, his ice-blue eyes finding me instantly. The bond thrummed at the contact, and I saw his jaw clench in response to it. He said something to the warrior he'd been drilling with, a tall woman with short dark hair and a scar across her cheek, then walked toward me. Every eye in the training yard turned to watch. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the sweat on his skin, the rise and fall of his chest as he caught his breath. Close enough that my wolf whined with the desire to touch him. "You came," he said. "You summoned me. I requested your presence. There's a difference." He studied me, his expression unreadable. "How did you sleep?" The question surprised me with its mundanity. "Well enough. The rooms are very comfortable." "Good." He grabbed a cloth from a nearby bench and wiped his face. "Tell me, Alara, can you fight?" "I what?" "Fight. Defend yourself. Have you had any combat training?" I shook my head slowly. "Basic self-defense that all pack members learn. Nothing formal. I work in the archives. I've never needed. You need it now." He tossed the cloth aside. "If you're going to be here, you need to be able to protect yourself. The Northern Territory isn't like your pack. We have enemies, rogues, rival packs, creatures from the deep mountains. I won't have you completely vulnerable. You're going to train me?" "No." He gestured toward the scarred woman who'd been sparring with him. She approached with the confident stride of a seasoned warrior. "Alara, this is Sarah, my second in command. She'll be responsible for your training." Sarah looked me up and down with an expression that was equal parts skepticism and interest. "She's small. She's stronger than she looks," Kale said, though I wasn't sure how he could possibly know that. "Start with basics. Footwork, balance, awareness. We'll assess her progress in a week." "As you command, Alpha." Sarah turned to me. "Come on then, archive girl. Let's see what you're made of. Kale walked away without another word, leaving me with his second-in-command and a training yard full of curious warriors. Sarah led me to a smaller practice area, separate from the main yards. "Don't worry about them," she said, noticing my discomfort at being watched. "They're curious, but they'll lose interest once we start. Now show me your stance." The next 2 hours were simultaneously humiliating and empowering. Sarah was a harsh but fair teacher, correcting my posture, my footwork, my balance with sharp words and sharper demonstrations. She moved with a grace and power I could only dream of possessing. But she didn't coddle me, and I was grateful for that. Again, she barked when I failed to block her strike for the 10th time. "You're thinking too much. Stop trying to predict what I'll do and just react. Your instincts are better than your overthinking mind." I tried again, and this time my body responded before my thoughts could interfere. My arm came up, deflecting her blow, and I felt a surge of triumph. "Better." Sarah actually smiled. "You're not hopeless. Weak, yes. Untrained, definitely. But not hopeless." By the time she called an end to the session, I was drenched in sweat, my muscles screaming, my hands blistered. But I felt more alive than I had in years. "Same time tomorrow," Sarah said. "And every day after. No exceptions." "Thank you." I managed between gasps for air. She studied me for a long moment. "You know, most wolves in your position would be hiding in their rooms, waiting for the month to end. Instead, you're out here getting your ass handed to you by warriors twice your size." "Why?" "Because hiding won't change anything," I said. "And I didn't come here to fail." Sarah's smile widened into something almost like approval. "I can see why the moon goddess chose you. You've got fire under that quiet exterior. Good. You're going to need it." The days began to take on a rhythm. Wake before dawn, eat breakfast alone in my rooms, train with Sarah until my body gave out, return to clean up and rest, then nothing. Kale made no effort to see me, to speak with me, to acknowledge the bond between us beyond that first morning in the training yard. I caught glimpses of him sometimes, in the great hall during evening meals, in the courtyard giving orders to his warriors, once walking the battlements at midnight when I couldn't sleep. But he never approached me, never sought me out. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. The bond stretched between us, a constant ache in my chest, growing more painful with each day of distance. I knew he felt it too. I caught him watching me sometimes, his ice-blue eyes tracking me across rooms, his jaw clenched as if he was fighting every instinct that screamed at him to come to me. But he never did. 2 weeks passed this way. My body grew stronger under Sarah's brutal training regimen. I made a few tentative friendships with other pack members. Petra, who brought my meals. A young warrior named Finn who helped me when I got lost in the fortress's maze-like corridors. An elder named Gregor who worked in the stronghold's library and was delighted to discuss ancient texts with someone who actually cared. I was carving out a place for myself here, slowly, painfully. But without Kale, it felt hollow. On the 15th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I found Sarah in the warrior's common room, drinking with a group of off-duty guards. She looked surprised when I approached, but gestured for me to sit. "What brings you down here, Luna?" She used the title with a hint of irony. I wasn't Luna yet, might never be. "I need to talk to you. About Kale." The warriors around us suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Within moments, we were alone. Sarah sighed. "What do you want to know? Why is he avoiding me? I came here to try, to give this bond a chance, but he won't even speak to me. How am I supposed to change his mind if he won't let me near him? Because he's terrified." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "I've known Kale for 12 years, served under him for 10. I've seen him face down enemy armies without flinching. I've watched him stare death in the face and laugh. But you terrify him more than any battle ever has. I'm not trying to hurt him. He knows that. But that doesn't matter. The last time he opened his heart to someone, she died in his arms. Metaphorically speaking." Sarah's expression softened. "When Lyria died, Kale didn't just lose his mate. He lost his humanity. Everything soft and gentle and kind in him got buried under layers of duty and rage and grief. He turned himself into a weapon because weapons don't feel pain. And now the moon goddess is asking him to be human again," I said quietly. "Exactly. And he doesn't know if he remembers how." Sarah studied me. "You want my advice? Please, stop waiting for him to come to you. He won't. His fear is too strong. If you want this bond to have a chance, you're going to have to be the brave one. You're going to have to push past his walls, force him to see you, to feel something other than fear. How do I do that? Sarah smiled. You're a smart woman. You'll figure it out. Just remember, beneath all that ice is a man who's been alone for 7 years. A man who's forgotten what it's like to be cared for, to matter to someone. Show him he's not just an alpha or a weapon or a curse. Show him he's a person worth loving. The next morning, I didn't go to training. Instead, I went to the kitchens. The head cook, a plump woman named Margot, looked startled when I entered her domain. Can I help you, miss? I'd like to prepare a meal, I said. For the alpha. Something simple but personal. Margot's eyebrows rose. The alpha doesn't usually. I know, but I'm asking anyway. Will you help me? She studied me for a long moment, then smiled. What did you have in mind? 2 hours later, I stood outside Cale's private chambers, carrying a tray with fresh bread, roasted meat, vegetables from the winter stores, and a pot of strong tea. My hands were shaking, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knocked before I could lose my nerve. What? His voice came from within, sharp and impatient. I opened the door. Cale sat at a large desk covered in maps and documents, quill in hand, looking every bit the commanding alpha. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face when he saw me. Elara, what are you? You've been avoiding me, I said, stepping inside and closing the door behind me. For 2 weeks, you've pretended I don't exist. But I'm not leaving, and I'm not giving up. So you're going to stop hiding behind your duties and actually talk to me. I set the tray down on his desk, moving aside maps and papers with more confidence than I felt. What is this? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Lunch. You've been working since before dawn. I asked the guards. You need to eat. I'll eat when I'm finished. No, you'll eat now. With me. I pulled up a chair and sat down, meeting his ice blue stare without flinching. And you're going to tell me about what you're working on, and I'm going to listen, and we're going to have a normal conversation like two people who are supposed to be mates. Cale stared at me, his jaw clenched, muscles tense. For a moment, I thought he might order me out, might use his alpha command to force me to leave. Then slowly, the tension drained from his shoulders. He set down his quill. You're incredibly stubborn, he said. You're incredibly infuriating, I countered. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. He looked down at the food I'd brought, and something shifted in his expression. You made this, with help from Margot. I'm not much of a cook, but I tried. He picked up a piece of bread, tore off a chunk, and ate it slowly. His eyes closed briefly, and I saw the tension in his jaw ease slightly. It's good, he said quietly. Thank you. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the crackling of the fire in his hearth. But it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was peaceful. I'm trying to reroute the Southern Patrol routes, he said finally, gesturing to the maps. We've had increasing reports of rogue activity near the border. Small packs, mostly displaced by the harsh winter. But some are getting bold, testing our defenses. I leaned forward, studying the maps. Why the southern border specifically? The terrain is more difficult there, mountains and ravines that provide cover. It's our weakest point defensively. He traced a line on the map with his finger. I'm trying to find a way to increase patrols without spreading our warriors too thin. What about here? I pointed to a spot on the map. There's a ridge overlooking this valley. If you station scouts there, they'd have visibility over the entire approach. He looked at where I was pointing, then at me, surprise clear in his eyes. How did you know that? My father was a cartographer. I grew up studying maps. I smiled slightly. I told you, I work in the archives. I know more about tactical geography than most warriors. Cale stared at me for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he pulled the map closer, studying my suggestion with new interest. That could work, he murmured. It would require building a scout post, but the strategic advantage. He looked up at me again. You have a good eye for this. Thank you. We fell into discussion, his initial resistance melting away as we debated patrol routes and defensive positions. I found myself relaxing, forgetting to be nervous, just enjoying the simple pleasure of talking to someone who challenged my ideas and listened to my input. At some point, the food was forgotten, the tea grew cold, and we were simply two people bent over maps, building something together. When Petra knocked to announce evening meal, I was startled to realize hours had passed. Kale looked equally surprised, his expression softening in a way I hadn't seen before. I should go, I said, standing reluctantly. Ilara. His voice stopped me at the door. I turned back to find him watching me. The ice in his eyes thawed to something warmer, more uncertain. Thank you. For lunch. For the company. For not giving up. My heart swelled. I told you, I didn't come here to fail. No, he agreed softly. You didn't. As I left his chambers, the bond in my chest sang with a warmth it hadn't felt since we'd met. It wasn't acceptance, not yet. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, a beginning was all you needed. Chapter 4. After that day in Kale's study, something shifted between us. He still didn't seek me out openly, still maintained his distance in public, but there were small changes. A nod of acknowledgement when we passed in the corridors. His eyes finding mine across the great hall during evening meals. Once, I caught him watching me train with Sarah, his expression unreadable, but his attention absolute. The bond seemed to breathe easier, the constant ache in my chest softening to something almost bearable. 3 days after our lunch together, I returned to my quarters after training to find a package on my bed. Inside was a set of proper training clothes, leather pants and a tunic made to fit my smaller frame, along with sturdy boots and protective arm guards. There was no note, but I didn't need one. I knew who they were from. I ran my fingers over the soft leather, something warm blooming in my chest. These weren't hand-me-downs or borrowed items. These were made for me, chosen for me. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. The next morning, I wore them to training. Sarah noticed immediately, her eyebrows rising. New gear. A gift, I said simply. She grinned. Is that so? Well, let's see if it helps you block worth a damn. Again, my training intensified. Sarah pushed me harder now that I had proper equipment, teaching me not just defensive moves but offensive strikes, how to use my size as an advantage rather than a weakness, how to turn an opponent's strength against them. You'll never overpower a full-grown alpha, she said, demonstrating a throw that used momentum and leverage. But you don't need to. You need to be smart, fast, unpredictable. Make them underestimate you, then strike where they're not expecting it. I threw myself into the lessons with desperate focus. Every bruise, every aching muscle, every small victory felt like proof that I belonged here, that I could be more than the quiet archive worker everyone had dismissed. On my 20th day in the Northern Territory, I was walking back from training when I heard shouting from the main courtyard. A crowd had gathered, their voices raised in alarm. I pushed through to see what was happening and froze. A young girl, no more than 8 or 9, hung from the battlements above, her fingers clinging to the stone edge. She must have been playing where she shouldn't have been and lost her footing. Below her was a 30-foot drop onto stone pavement. Warriors were shouting, trying to organize a rescue, but she was too far out, the angle too difficult. If she fell, she would die. Hold on, someone yelled. We're coming. But I could see the terror on her face, could see her fingers slipping. There wasn't time for a careful rescue. I didn't think. I just moved. I ran to the base of the wall and started climbing. There were enough handholds, decorative stonework, window ledges, gaps in the mortar, that I could pull myself up. My new training made my body respond with a speed and confidence I'd never possessed before. What is she doing? Someone gasped below. She'll fall. I blocked out the voices, focusing only on the climb, on reaching the girl before her grip gave out. My fingers found purchase, my boots pushed against stone, and I climbed faster than I'd ever thought possible. The girl saw me coming, her tear-streaked face turning toward me. Help me, she sobbed. Please. I've got you, I called out. Just hold on a little longer. I reached the level of the battlements and carefully worked my way along the narrow ledge toward where she hung. Below, the crowd had gone silent, everyone holding their breath. What's your name? I asked, keeping my voice calm as I positioned myself above her. Our Rosie. Okay, Rosie. I'm going to grab your wrists now. When I do, I need you to let go of the edge and trust me to hold you. Can you do that? She nodded, her small face pale with fear. I braced myself against the battlements and reached down, wrapping my hands firmly around her wrists. On 3. 1, 2, 3. She let go, and for a terrifying moment, her full weight pulled at my arms, threatening to drag me over the edge with her. But my new strength held, and I managed to swing her toward the wall where she could get her feet against the stone. Climb up, I instructed. I've got you. You won't fall. Together, we worked our way up until I could pull her over the edge of the battlements onto the safety of the walkway. She immediately threw her arms around my neck, sobbing into my shoulder. "It's okay," I murmured, holding her close. "You're safe now." The crowd below erupted in cheers and howls of relief. Warriors rushed up the stairs to reach us, and within moments, we were surrounded by concerned pack members. A woman pushed through the crowd, Rosie's mother, and swept her daughter into her arms, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she gasped, looking at me. "Thank you. She's safe," I said gently. "That's all that matters." As the commotion began to die down and the crowd dispersed, I became aware of a presence at the edge of the walkway. I turned to find Cale standing there, his ice-blue eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. He said nothing, just stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Then he turned and walked away. That evening, there was another knock on my door. But this time, when I opened it, Cale stood on the other side. My heart stuttered. He'd never come to my quarters before, had never sought me out in private like this. "May I come in?" His voice was rough, strained. I stepped aside wordlessly, and he entered, his large frame making my sitting room feel suddenly smaller. He moved to the window, staring out at the darkening sky, his jaw clenched tight. "That was incredibly reckless," he said finally. "What you did today. You could have fallen. You could have died. But I didn't. Rosie is safe, and so am I. You got lucky." He turned to face me, and I was shocked to see fear in his eyes. Raw, undisguised fear. "Do you have any idea what it was like watching you climb that wall? Watching you risk your life like that? She was a child." "I know." The words exploded from him. "I know she was a child. I know she needed help. But watching you up there, knowing that one slip would..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. This is why I can't." He broke off, running his hands through his dark hair in frustration. I took a step toward him. "You were afraid because you care. Because the bond is working exactly as it's supposed to, whether you want it to or not." "Of course I care." His voice cracked. "That's the problem, Alara. Every day you're here, every moment I spend near you, the bond gets stronger. You get further under my skin. And the thought of losing you, of watching you die like I watched Lyria die." He closed his eyes. "It's killing me." "Then stop fighting it," I said softly, taking another step closer. "Stop trying to protect yourself from something that's already happening. The bond is there, Cale. It's real. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It just makes it hurt more. I don't know how to do this anymore." The confession was barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to let someone in. I don't remember how to be anything other than what I've become." "Then let me help you remember." I was standing right in front of him now, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "You don't have to do this alone. That's the whole point of having a mate. You face things together." He opened his eyes, and the vulnerability I saw there nearly broke my heart. "What if I hurt you? What if my darkness is too much? What if it's not?" I reached up slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed my hand over his heart. "What if your darkness and my quiet fit together perfectly? What if the moon goddess knew exactly what she was doing when she chose us for each other?" He stared down at where my hand rested on his chest, his breathing ragged. I could feel his heart racing beneath my palm, could feel the bond singing between us, begging to be acknowledged. "I saw you today," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Climbing that wall, saving that child without a thought for your own safety. And I realized something." "What?" "You're not fragile. You're not weak. You're not some delicate thing that will shatter at the first sign of danger." He lifted his hand, his fingers hovering just above my cheek. "You're strong, Alara. Stronger than I gave you credit for. Stronger than I allowed myself to see." "I've had to be," I said quietly. "I've spent my whole life being overlooked, dismissed, treated as less than. But I'm still here. I'm still fighting. And I'm not giving up on this bond, no matter how hard you push me away." His fingers finally made contact, cupping my cheek with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so powerful. His thumb stroked across my cheekbone, and I couldn't stop the small sound of longing that escaped my throat. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "Of this, of you, of feeling anything again." "I know. I'm terrified too." I leaned into his touch. "But maybe we can be terrified together." Something in his expression broke. The ice in his eyes melted completely, replaced by a warmth and longing so intense it took my breath away. "Alara," he whispered, my name a prayer on his lips. Then he lowered his head and kissed me. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate, hungry, 7 years of loneliness and longing poured into one searing moment. His lips were warm and demanding against mine, his hands sliding into my hair to angle my head exactly how he wanted it. I melted into him, my arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer. The bond exploded between us, golden light flooding through my veins, setting every nerve ending on fire. This was what we'd been denying, what we'd been fighting, this perfect, terrifying, beautiful connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. 1 month, he said roughly. You asked for 1 month. But I don't think I can let you go after that. I don't think I can let you go at all. Joy burst through my chest, so powerful it brought tears to my eyes. Then don't. This won't be easy, he warned. I'm broken, Alara. Damaged. I have enemies and responsibilities and a darkness in me that. I don't care. I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I didn't come here for easy. I came here for you. All of you. The light, the dark, the broken pieces. I want all of it. He stared at me for a long moment, something that looked like awe crossing his features. Then he kissed me again, softer this time, reverent. I don't deserve you, he murmured against my lips. Lucky for you, the moon goddess doesn't care what you think you deserve. He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was so unexpected, so purely joyful, that I couldn't help but laugh with him. We stood there in my sitting room, wrapped in each other's arms, the bond singing between us. And for the first time since I'd arrived in the Northern Territory, I felt truly home. Stay with me tonight, Cale said, his voice low and rough. Not like that. I just want to hold you. To know you're real, that this is real. Yes, I whispered. He lifted me easily, carrying me to the bedroom and laying me gently on the massive bed. He kicked off his boots and climbed in beside me, pulling me against his chest so that I could hear the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Tell me about Lyria, I said softly. I want to know about her. His body tensed, but after a moment he began to speak. She was human, small like you but fierce. She had red hair and green eyes and absolutely no sense of self-preservation. When her village was attacked by rogues, she stayed behind to help evacuate children while everyone else fled. That's where I found her, fighting off 3 rogues with nothing but a kitchen knife and pure stubbornness. I smiled against his chest. She sounds amazing. She was. His arms tightened around me. She was also stubborn as hell, constantly getting into trouble, always seeing the best in people even when they didn't deserve it. She made me laugh. She made me want to be better than the angry, grieving boy who'd just lost his father. How long were you together? 2 years. 2 years of trying to navigate an impossible situation. An alpha and a human, a bond that existed but couldn't be fully completed until she turned 18. We were so close, Alara. So close to having everything. And then, his voice broke. Then she was gone, and I was alone again. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry you lost her. I thought I would never recover. For 7 years, I convinced myself that love was weakness, that feeling anything was a liability. I turned myself into a weapon because weapons don't feel pain. He tilted my chin up so he could look into my eyes. And then you walked into that gathering, and the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. The bond snapped into place, and I panicked. Because it felt like betraying her. Yes, and because I was terrified of losing someone again. He stroked my hair gently. But watching you today, seeing your courage, your strength, your refusal to let fear stop you from doing what was right, I realized that Lyria would hate what I've become. She would hate that I've spent 7 years hiding from life, from love, from everything that makes us human. You're not hiding anymore, I said. No, he agreed softly. I'm not. Thanks to you. We lay there in comfortable silence, the bond humming contentedly between us, until I felt sleep beginning to pull at me. Cale, I murmured drowsily. Yes, I'm glad the moon goddess chose you for me. His arms tightened around me, and I felt him press a kiss to the top of my head. I'm beginning to think she knew exactly what she was doing. I fell asleep in the arms of my mate, the cursed alpha who was learning how to be human again. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt completely and utterly safe. Chapter 5. I woke to unfamiliar warmth and the steady rhythm of breathing that wasn't my own. For a disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then everything came flooding back, Cale's confession, his kiss, falling asleep in his arms. I opened my eyes to find him already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching me with an expression so tender it made my heart ache. "How long have you been staring at me?" I asked, my voice rough with sleep. "Not long." A small smile tugged at his lips. "You talk in your sleep." I felt heat flood my cheeks. "I do not." "You do." Something about books needing to be organized by subject rather than author. His smile widened into something genuine and beautiful. It was endearing. "That's mortifying. That's adorable." He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his touch gentle. "Good morning, Alara." "Good morning." I looked toward the window where early dawn light was beginning to filter through. "You should probably leave before the whole stronghold starts gossiping." "Let them gossip." But he sat up anyway, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "Though I suppose you're right. There are appearances to maintain, at least until we make a formal announcement." "An announcement?" He looked at me, his ice blue eyes serious. "That you're staying. That I'm accepting the bond. That you're going to be Luna of the Northern Territory." He paused. "If that's still what you want." "Yes," I said without hesitation. "That's what I want." Something like relief crossed his features. He leaned down and kissed me softly, and I felt the bond sing with contentment. "I have meetings all day," he said reluctantly, pulling away. "Border negotiations with the Eastern Pack, supply requisitions for winter stores, discipline hearings for some warriors who got drunk and caused property damage. The usual excitement of leadership. Sounds thrilling. It's tedious and necessary." He stood, pulling on his boots. "But tonight have dinner with me. Not in the great hall with everyone watching, but in my private chambers. Just the two of us. I'd like that." He moved to the door, then paused, turning back to me. "Alara, thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For pushing past my walls. For being brave enough to fight for something I was too afraid to reach for." His expression was raw, vulnerable. "For reminding me what it feels like to be alive." Before I could respond, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. I lay back on the bed, a smile spreading across my face. The constant ache of the bond had transformed into something warm and golden, humming with contentment in my chest. Everything was finally falling into place. I should have known better than to trust in happiness. I spent the morning in the Stronghold's library with Gregor, the elderly scholar who'd become something of a mentor to me. We were cataloging a collection of historical texts that had just been recovered from a collapsed wing of the fortress when Sarah burst through the doors, her face grim. "Alara, you need to come with me. Now." The urgency in her voice made my stomach drop. "What's wrong?" "Just come." She led me through the corridors at a near run, her hand on her sword hilt. We emerged into the main courtyard to find it packed with warriors, all armed, all tense. At the center of the commotion stood Kale, his expression carved from granite, facing 3 wolves I didn't recognize. They were clearly alphas. Their power radiated even from a distance. But there was something wrong about them, something dark and predatory that made my skin crawl. "What's happening?" I whispered to Sarah. "Rogues. Alpha rogues. They came under a white flag, demanding an audience with Kale." Her jaw clenched. "They're here to challenge for territory." My blood ran cold. Territory challenges were rare but brutal. A fight to the death between alphas, with the winner claiming the loser's lands and pack. It was an ancient law, one that couldn't be refused without bringing shame and potential war. I pushed forward through the crowd, needing to get closer, needing to hear what was being said. "Give you this one chance to reconsider," Kale was saying, his voice cold and deadly calm. "Leave now, and I'll let you live. Stay, and I'll kill all 3 of you." The largest of the rogue alphas laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Big words from a cursed wolf. "We've heard the stories, Stormborn. You're not what you used to be. 7 years of grief and isolation have made you weak. Then test me." Kale's voice dropped to a lethal growl. "Challenge me, and discover exactly how weak I am." "Oh, we will." The rogue alpha's eyes swept the crowd and landed on me. Something in his expression shifted, became calculating. "But first, let's discuss terms. We're not unreasonable. We don't want your whole territory, just the southern borders. Rich hunting grounds, strategic position. Give us that, and we'll leave peacefully." The answer is no. Not even to avoid bloodshed. Not even to protect your people. The rogue's smile turned cruel. "Not even to protect that pretty little Omega I smell on you? Your mate, if I'm not mistaken." Every eye in the courtyard turned to me. I felt the weight of their stares, the sudden tension that rippled through the crowd. Kale's entire body went rigid, his power flaring so intensely that several warriors stumbled back. You will not speak of her. You will not look at her. You will not even think her name, or I will tear out your throat where you stand. Touchy. The rogue alpha's smile widened. So the rumors are true. The cursed alpha has finally found a second chance mate. How convenient. State your challenge or leave, Kale snarled. Very well. Traditional combat, alpha to alpha. 3 days from now at dawn. Location of your choosing. If you win, we leave and never return. If we win. The rogue's eyes found me again, and my skin crawled. We take the Southern Territory and your mate. No. The word exploded from Kale with such force that the stones beneath our feet trembled. She is not part of this negotiation. She is not a prize to be wagered. Then refuse the challenge. Yield the territory peacefully. The rogue shrugged. Your choice, Stormborn. But make it quickly. My patience has limits. I could see the war playing out in Kale's expression. Fury and fear and protective instinct warring with duty and pride. If he refused, he would be seen as weak, and other packs would take it as an invitation to challenge him. The Northern Territory would be under constant threat. But if he accepted, he would be putting himself at risk. And despite his confidence, despite his power, these were 3 experienced alpha rogues who had clearly been planning this for some time. Before I could think better of it, I pushed through the last line of warriors and stepped into the open space between Kale and the rogues. Elara, get back. Kale started. I accept your terms, I said, my voice ringing clear across the courtyard. But I have one addition. The rogue alpha looked amused. An Omega wishes to negotiate? How delightful. If Kale wins, you don't just leave. You swear a blood oath never to challenge the Northern Territory again. And you spread word to every rogue pack in the territories that this land is under the protection of an alpha who shows no mercy to those who threaten his people. And if we win, I lifted my chin, forcing my voice to remain steady. Then I'll go with you willingly. No resistance, no rescue attempts. You have my word. No, Kale roared. Elara, what are you doing? I turned to face him, and I saw the absolute terror in his eyes. Trusting in my mate, I said softly. You won't lose, Kale. I know you won't. You can't wager yourself. I just did. I looked back at the rogues. Do we have an agreement? The 3 alphas exchanged glances, clearly surprised by my audacity. Then the leader nodded slowly. We have an agreement. 3 days, dawn, location of your alpha's choosing. May the moon goddess favor the strongest. They turned and walked out of the courtyard, leaving behind a stunned silence. The moment they were gone, Kale's hand clamped around my arm, and he dragged me through the crowd, up the stairs, and into his private chambers. He slammed the door behind us and rounded on me, his eyes blazing. What the hell were you thinking? His voice shook with barely controlled fury. You just offered yourself as collateral in a death match. Do you have any idea what they would do to you if I lost? You won't lose. You don't know that. He was shaking, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I'm good, Elara, but I'm not invincible. 3 against 1 are not favorable odds, no matter how skilled I am. And you just gave them the one thing that could destroy me more than any physical wound. I gave you a reason to fight harder than you've ever fought, I said, stepping closer to him. I gave you something to protect, something to come back to. You're not fighting alone anymore, Kale. You're fighting for us. This isn't some romantic gesture. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip tight but not painful. This is life and death. If I fail, if something goes wrong, they will take you. They will hurt you in ways I can't even speak of. They will use you, break you, and there will be nothing I can do to stop it because I'll be dead. Then don't die. I placed my hands on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palms. Fight like the alpha you are. Fight like the mate who finally has something to live for. And win. He stared at me, his breathing ragged, his eyes wild with fear and fury. You infuriating, reckless, brave, impossible woman. Those are probably the nicest things you've ever called me. He made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled me against him, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. I can't lose you. I just found you. I can't. You won't. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him just as fiercely. I have complete faith in you. Your faith might be misplaced. My faith is in the bond the moon goddess forged between us. And she doesn't make mistakes. We stood there for a long moment, clinging to each other, the bond thrumming with a mixture of fear and determination. Finally, Kale pulled back just enough to look down at me. If I win this, when I win this, you and I are having a very long conversation about consulting me before you make life-altering decisions. That seems fair. And you're never doing anything like this again. I can't promise that, he groaned, resting his forehead against mine. Why did the moon goddess give me the most stubborn mate in existence? Because you needed someone stubborn enough to break through your walls. I smiled up at him. And someone foolish enough to bet her life on you. That wasn't foolish. That was insane. Maybe. But I meant what I said. I trust you, Cale. Completely. He kissed me then, hard and desperate, pouring all his fear and love and determination into the contact. When we finally broke apart, his eyes had cleared, the panic replaced by cold, focused determination. 3 days, he said. I have 3 days to prepare, to train, to make absolutely certain that I don't lose. What can I do to help? Stay alive, stay safe, and trust that I will come back to you. His expression softened slightly. That's all I need from you, Alara. Your faith, your presence, and the knowledge that I have something worth fighting for. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Cale threw himself into preparation with single-minded intensity. He trained from before dawn until long after dark, pushing his body to its absolute limits. I watched him sometimes from the edge of the training yard, seeing the deadly grace with which he moved, the raw power he commanded. He was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Sarah worked with him on strategy, simulating fighting multiple opponents. They'll try to separate you, surround you, use their numbers advantage, she explained. You need to keep moving, never let them box you in. Take out the weakest first to even the odds. I spent my time in the library, researching everything I could find about alpha challenges, about rogue packs, about anything that might give Cale an edge. Gregor helped me, pulling ancient texts and treatises on combat strategy. You truly believe he'll win? Gregor asked me on the second night as we pored over dusty manuscripts by candlelight. I have to, I said simply. The alternative is unthinkable. On the night before the challenge, Cale came to my quarters. He looked exhausted, his body showing the strain of 3 days of brutal training, but his eyes were clear and focused. I need you to promise me something, he said. Anything. If something goes wrong tomorrow, if I fall, I need you to run. Don't honor your agreement with the rogues. Don't sacrifice yourself. Just run as far and as fast as you can. Cale, promise me, Alara. His hands cupped my face, his thumbs stroking my cheeks. I need to know that even if I fail, you'll survive. That you'll live and eventually find happiness again. I need to know that my death won't also mean yours. Tears burned in my eyes. I can't promise that. You have to. No. I covered his hands with my own. Because you're not going to fall. You're going to win. And we're going to have a lifetime together. That's the only outcome I'm willing to accept. He stared at me for a long moment, then crushed me against him, his face buried in my hair. I love you, he whispered, the words raw and desperate. I know it's too soon. I know we've barely had any time, but I need you to know. I love you, Alara. You brought me back to life. You gave me a reason to be human again. My heart swelled until I thought it might burst. I love you too, I whispered back. So you'd better win tomorrow, so I can spend the rest of my life proving it to you. We held each other through the night, neither of us sleeping, both of us memorizing the feeling of being together, the sound of each other's breathing, the warmth of skin against skin. As dawn approached, Cale finally pulled away. It's time. We dressed in silence, the weight of what was coming pressing down on us. Cale put on leather armor, not heavy enough to slow him down, but enough to provide some protection. He strapped weapons to his belt, tested their weight, his movements methodical and practiced. I watched him transform from my mate into a warrior, an alpha preparing for battle. Ready? He asked, turning to me. No, but let's go anyway. We walked together through the silent fortress, warriors falling into step behind us. By the time we reached the gates, we had a full escort, Sarah, Finn, and dozens of others who would bear witness to the challenge. The chosen location was a clearing in the forest, a natural amphitheater ringed by ancient trees. The rogues were already there, waiting, their eyes gleaming with predatory anticipation. Cale stopped at the edge of the clearing and turned to me one last time. He kissed me deeply, desperately, pouring everything he felt into that single contact. I'm coming back to you, he whispered against my lips. That's a promise. Then he stepped into the clearing, and the challenge began. Chapter 6. The morning air was crisp and cold, my breath forming small clouds as I stood at the edge of the clearing with the other witnesses. Sarah stood beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder in silent support. In the center of the clearing, Cale faced the 3 rogue alphas. The leader, a massive wolf with a scar running down his face, stepped forward first. "Last chance to yield, Stormborn," he called out. "Give us the territory and the girl, and we'll make your death quick." Cale's response was to shift. The transformation was instantaneous and breathtaking. One moment he was a man, the next a massive black wolf, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, with ice-blue eyes that gleamed with deadly intelligence. His fur seemed to absorb the light, making him look like a living shadow. The rogues shifted as well. 3 large wolves, scarred and battle-hardened, spreading out to surround him. "Remember," Sarah whispered beside me, "Cale has faced worse odds. He once held off an entire rogue pack alone for 3 days during the Winter Wars. He's the most skilled alpha in the territories." I wanted to believe her, but my heart was hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The rogues attacked simultaneously, a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm. But Cale was already moving, his body a blur of black fur and lethal grace. He met the first attacker head-on, his jaws clamping around the wolf's throat, and using the rogue's own momentum to flip him into the second attacker. The 2 wolves went down in a tangle of limbs and snarls. The 3rd rogue, the leader, came at Cale from behind, but Cale spun with impossible speed, his claws raking across the rogue's face, deepening the scar that was already there. Blood splattered across the forest floor. The fight was brutal, savage, primal. The rogues fought with the desperation of wolves who had nothing to lose. They coordinated their attacks, trying to separate Cale, to box him in, to use their numbers against him. But Cale fought like the alpha he was, strategic, ruthless, and utterly relentless. Every move was calculated, every strike purposeful. He was always 1 step ahead, anticipating their attacks, turning their own tactics against them. The smallest of the 3 rogues made a critical mistake, lunging too far forward in his eagerness to land a killing blow. Cale caught him mid-leap, his powerful jaws closing around the rogue's spine with a sickening crunch. The rogue went limp, dead before he hit the ground. 2 left. The remaining rogues seemed to realize they were losing. Their movements became more frantic, more desperate. The leader let out a howl, not of challenge, but of rage and fear. They attacked together, abandoning strategy for raw brutality. Teeth and claws flashed in the morning light. Fur and blood flew through the air. Cale took damage. I could see gashes opening on his flanks, his shoulder, could smell his blood mixing with theirs in the churned earth of the clearing. My wolf howled in distress, desperate to go to him, to help him, but I forced her down. This was his fight. Interfering would only make things worse. The 2nd rogue managed to get his jaws around Cale's front leg, trying to break it to cripple him. But Cale twisted with a snarl of fury, his own jaws finding the rogue's throat and tearing it out in one savage motion. The rogue's body convulsed once, then went still. Only the leader remained. The scarred alpha backed away, his eyes wide with something that looked like fear. He'd thought this would be easy, that the rumors of Cale's weakness were true. He'd been wrong. "Yield." Cale's voice came out as a growl, somehow still carrying human words despite his wolf form. It was an alpha ability, one reserved for the most powerful. "Yield, and I'll let you live." The rogue alpha's eyes darted to me, then to the trees, calculating his chances of escape. "Don't," Cale warned. "If you run, I'll hunt you down. If you break your word, I'll make your death last days instead of seconds. But if you yield now, swear the blood oath, you can leave with your life." For a long moment, the clearing was silent except for heavy breathing and the drip of blood on forest floor. Then the rogue alpha lowered his head in submission. "I yield." He shifted back to human form, a scarred, muscular man in his 40s, his face a mask of defeat. "I, Marcus Greythorn, alpha of the Shadowfang rogues, yield to Cale Stormborn. I swear a blood oath never to challenge the Northern Territory again, and to spread word that these lands are protected by an alpha who shows no mercy to those who threaten his people." Cale shifted back to human form as well, standing naked and covered in blood but utterly unbowed. "The oath is witnessed and accepted. Leave. Now. And pray we never meet again." Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed the bodies of his fallen comrades and disappeared into the forest at a dead run. The moment he was gone, I broke free from Sarah's grip and ran to Cale. He caught me in his arms, holding me tight despite his wounds, his blood soaking into my clothes. "You won," I sobbed against his chest. "You won. I told you I would." His voice was rough with exhaustion, but there was triumph in it too. "I told you I'd come back to you." The Northern Territory wolves erupted in howls of victory, the sound echoing through the forest. Sarah approached with medical supplies, but Cale waved her off. "I'm fine. They're surface wounds. They'll heal." "You're covered in blood, you stubborn ass," Sarah said, but she was grinning. "At least let us clean you up before you parade through the stronghold like a barbarian." "Fine." He looked down at me, his ice-blue eyes soft. "But Alara stays with me." We made our way back to the stronghold, Cale leaning on me more than he probably wanted to admit. The wounds were healing. I could see them already starting to close, his alpha healing kicking in. But he'd lost blood and pushed his body to its absolute limits. In his private chambers, I helped him into the bathing room where servants had already prepared hot water. I carefully cleaned his wounds while he sat in the large copper tub, his eyes closed, his breathing slowly returning to normal. "That was the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed," I said softly, running a cloth gently over a deep gash on his shoulder. "I've had worse fights," but his hand found mine, squeezing gently. "Though I've never had so much to lose before." That made it different. Different how? Scarier. And more motivating. He opened his eyes, looking at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "When that rogue looked at you, when I saw him calculating whether he could grab you and run, I've never felt rage like that before. Not even when Lyria died." "Cale, let me finish." He pulled me closer, despite the water and blood. "Lyria's death broke something in me. It convinced me that love was weakness, that caring was vulnerability. But today I realized something. Love isn't what made me weak. Fear of loss was. Refusing to feel, refusing to live, that was the real weakness." He cupped my face with both hands, water dripping from his fingers. "You make me strong, Alara. Not because you give me something to protect, but because you remind me why life is worth fighting for. Why tomorrow matters. Why hope isn't foolish." Tears streamed down my face. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good. Then we're even." He pulled me into the tub with him, clothes and all, and kissed me deeply. "No more waiting. No more fear. I want the bonding ceremony. I want you as my Luna, my mate, my everything. I want the whole world to know you're mine and I'm yours." "When?" "Tonight. Tomorrow. As soon as it can be arranged." His eyes searched mine. "Unless you want to wait." "I've been waiting my whole life for you," I whispered. "I don't want to wait another moment." The bonding ceremony was held 3 days later, under the light of the full moon. The entire Northern Territory had gathered, along with representatives from allied packs. Even the Moonstone Pack, my former pack, had sent witnesses. I wore a dress of silver and white that Petra and the other female wolves had spent 2 days creating. My hair was loose, woven with moonflowers and winter berries. Around my neck was a silver collar, the Luna's mark, inscribed with runes of protection and devotion. Cale wore traditional ceremonial leathers, black and silver, his dark hair pulled back to show his strong features. He looked every inch the powerful alpha, but when his eyes found mine across the ceremonial circle, they held nothing but love. Elder Morthan, who had come from the Moonstone Pack to perform the ceremony, called us forward. "We gather under the light of the moon goddess to witness the bonding of 2 souls," he intoned, his ancient voice carrying across the silent crowd. "Alpha Cale Stormborn of the Northern Territory and Alara Whitmore of the Moonstone Pack. Step forward and declare your intentions." We moved to the center of the circle, facing each other, our hands joining. "I, Cale Stormborn, Alpha of the Northern Territory, accept Alara Whitmore as my fated mate, my Luna, and my equal in all things. I pledge my protection, my devotion, and my heart from this day until my last breath. I, Alara Whitmore, accept Cale Stormborn as my fated mate, my Alpha, and my equal in all things. I pledge my loyalty, my love, and my spirit from this day until my last breath." "Then let the bond be sealed," Elder Morthan declared. Cale pulled me close, his hand sliding into my hair as he tilted my head back. His eyes met mine, and I saw 7 years of loneliness, grief, and self-imposed isolation fade away, replaced by hope and love and fierce possessiveness. He lowered his head and kissed me as his teeth gently pierced the soft skin of my neck, the bonding bite that would mark me as his mate for all to see. The bond exploded between us, golden light flooding through every nerve, every cell, connecting us on a level deeper than physical. I could feel his emotions, his love, his devotion, his absolute certainty that this was right. And he could feel mine, my trust, my joy, my unwavering faith in him. We were no longer two separate souls. We were one. The crowd erupted in howls and cheers, but I barely heard them. All I could focus on was Cale, on the bond thrumming between us, complete and perfect and unbreakable. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. Mine, he whispered. Yours, I agreed. And you're mine. Always. The celebration lasted long into the night. Feasting, music, dancing, pack members from across the territories coming forward to offer their congratulations and pledges of loyalty. I met alphas and betas and warriors, each one showing respect to their new Luna. It was overwhelming and wonderful and exhausting all at once. Finally, as the moon reached its peak, Cale took my hand and led me away from the festivities, up to his private chambers. Our private chambers now. He closed the door behind us, shutting out the noise and celebration, leaving just the two of us in the firelit quiet. Alone at last, he murmured, pulling me into his arms. Did you enjoy your bonding ceremony, Alpha? I enjoyed the part where you became mine. His hands slid down my back, finding the laces of my dress. Though I'm looking forward to this next part even more. Heat flooded through me as he slowly, deliberately began unlacing my dress, his eyes never leaving mine. Nervous? He asked softly. A little, I admitted. I haven't done this before. Something that looked like possessive satisfaction crossed his features. Good. Then I'll be your first. Your only. He kissed me gently. I'll take care of you, Alara. I promise. He did. He was gentle and patient, taking his time, showing me pleasure I'd never imagined. And when we finally came together fully, completing the bond in every way, it felt like coming home. Afterwards, we lay tangled together in his massive bed, my head on his chest, his fingers trailing lazily through my hair. What are you thinking? I asked, tracing patterns on his skin. That I'm the luckiest bastard in all the territories. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. That the moon goddess must have been watching over me when she brought you into my life. That I don't deserve you, but I'm going to spend every day trying to be worthy of you anyway. You already are, I said softly. You just needed someone to remind you. We drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, the bond humming with contentment, two broken pieces that had found each other and become whole. Chapter 7. The weeks following our bonding ceremony passed in a blur of happiness I'd never imagined possible. I woke each morning in Cale's arms, the bond humming contentedly between us. I spent my days learning the duties of a Luna, settling disputes between pack members, organizing supply distributions, working with the healers to improve medical care throughout the territory. It was challenging work, but I loved it. For the first time in my life, I had purpose beyond simply surviving. I had a place, a role, people who looked to me for guidance and support. And I had Cale, my mate, my partner, my love. He was different now. Oh, he was still the powerful, commanding alpha who struck fear into his enemies and commanded absolute loyalty from his warriors. But with me, in private moments, he allowed himself to be soft, to laugh, to show vulnerability. Sometimes I would catch him watching me with an expression of wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe I was real. What? I asked one evening as we sat together in our chambers, reviewing supply reports for the winter months. Nothing, just thinking about how much has changed. He set aside his papers and pulled me onto his lap. A few months ago, I was convinced I would spend the rest of my life alone. And now you're stuck with me, I finished, looping my arms around his neck. Best fate I could have asked for. He nuzzled into my neck, breathing in my scent. Though I have to admit, I'm still waiting for you to do something reckless that stops my heart. I've been very well behaved lately. That's what worries me. You're planning something. I laughed, but he wasn't entirely wrong. I had been thinking about something, planning something, though I hadn't quite figured out how to bring it up yet. Cale, I started carefully. What would you think about opening the northern border to refugees? He pulled back to look at me, his expression curious. What kind of refugees? Rogues. Displaced wolves. Those who've lost their packs to war or disaster and have nowhere else to go. I could feel him tensing, so I pressed on quickly. Not dangerous ones, obviously. We'd screen them, assess each case individually. But we have the resources, the space. And there are so many wolves out there who are suffering simply because they have no pack to protect them. It's a risk, he said slowly. Rogues can be unpredictable, dangerous. Taking them in could bring trouble to our borders. I know, but turning them away because of what they might do, that's not who you are. That's not who we are. I cupped his face in my hands. You took me in when you had every reason to push me away. You gave me a chance when no one else would. Why shouldn't we extend that same compassion to others? He studied me for a long moment, his ice-blue eyes searching mine. Then he sighed, a smile tugging at his lips. You're going to make me soft, aren't you? Turn me from a feared alpha into someone who rescues strays. You were never as hard as you pretended to be. I just reminded you of that. I kissed him softly. So is that a yes? It's a we'll discuss it with the council and see what safeguards we can put in place. He squeezed me gently. But yes, in principle, I think it's a good idea. Aluna should have projects she's passionate about. This can be yours. Joy bloomed in my chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The council is going to fight you on this. Sarah especially. She's protective of our borders and suspicious of outsiders. Then I'll just have to be very persuasive. He laughed, the sound rich and warm. I have no doubt you will be. You convinced a cursed alpha to accept love again. Convincing a council should be easy by comparison. The council meeting 3 days later was exactly as difficult as Cale had predicted. Absolutely not, Sarah said the moment I finished presenting my proposal. Opening our borders to rogues is asking for trouble. We'd be inviting potential threats directly into our territory. With proper screening, I started. There is no such thing as proper screening for rogues, interrupted Gareth, one of the older council members. They're rogues for a reason. They couldn't function in pack society, or they committed crimes that got them exiled. Why should we take on that burden? Because not all rogues are criminals, I said firmly. Some are victims, survivors of pack wars, of natural disasters, of circumstances beyond their control. They deserve a chance at safety, at belonging to something again. And if they turn on us? Another council member asked. If they use our hospitality as an opportunity to gather intelligence, to weaken us from within, then we deal with them accordingly, Cale interjected, his voice cutting through the arguments. But we don't condemn innocent wolves to suffering because of what they might do. We assess each case individually, we set clear rules and expectations, and we monitor the situation carefully. But we also show compassion. The council members exchanged surprised glances. This was not the Cale they were used to. The one who saw everything in terms of threats and advantages. The Luna has a point, Gregor said quietly from his seat at the end of the table. The elderly scholar rarely spoke at council meetings, but when he did, people listened. We've grown strong by being feared. Perhaps it's time we also became strong by being just, by showing mercy to those who need it. Mercy is weakness, Gareth muttered. No, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. Cruelty is weakness. It takes no strength to turn away someone in need. But choosing compassion, choosing to help despite the risk, that takes courage. That's true strength. Sarah studied me for a long moment, then sighed. Fine. I don't like it, but I can see you're not going to let this go. What safeguards are you proposing? Relief flooded through me. If I could get Sarah on board, the others would follow. Each potential refugee would be interviewed extensively. We'd verify their stories, check for any history of violence or instability. They'd undergo a probationary period. 6 months where they'd be closely monitored and housed in a specific area. If they proved trustworthy, they could petition for full pack membership. If they caused any problems, they'd be removed immediately. Who would be responsible for this program? Another council member asked. I would, I said without hesitation, with a team of trusted wolves to help with interviews and monitoring. This would be my project, my responsibility. Cale's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. I could feel his pride through the bond. After another hour of debate and refinement, the council voted. It wasn't unanimous. Gareth and 2 others voted against, but it passed. I had my refugee program. Word spread quickly throughout the territories that the Northern Pack was accepting applications from displaced wolves. Within a week, we had our first arrivals. A family of 4, parents and 2 young children, who had lost their pack when a rival alpha challenged and killed their leader. They were thin, exhausted, their eyes haunted by what they'd witnessed. But when I welcomed them, when I showed them to the clean, warm quarters we'd prepared, the mother broke down in tears. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you so much. We thought we would die in the wilderness. You're safe now, I told her gently. And if you prove yourselves trustworthy, you'll have a home here for as long as you want it. Over the next few weeks, more arrived. A young male who'd been exiled for defending his sister from an abusive alpha. An elderly couple whose pack had been destroyed by a landslide. A teenage girl who'd escaped from a pack that practiced forced bonding. Each one had a story. Each one had suffered. And each one looked at me with such desperate hope that it broke my heart and filled it simultaneously. Sarah helped me develop the interview process, her natural suspicion actually proving useful in identifying the few applicants who were clearly lying or had violent histories. We turned away. 2 wolves who'd been exiled for serious crimes, and one who seemed unstable and potentially dangerous. But the ones we accepted began to flourish. The children played in the courtyards, their laughter filling spaces that had been too serious for too long. The adults took on jobs, helping in the kitchens, assisting with construction projects, learning trades from our established pack members. They were grateful, hardworking, and slowly they began to feel like part of the pack rather than outsiders. Cale watched it all with a mixture of amusement and growing approval. I have to admit, he said one evening as we observed a group of refugee children playing with Northern Territory pups. You might have been right about this. Might have been. I raised an eyebrow at him. Fine. We're definitely right. Happy. Very. I leaned against him, watching the children play. They just needed a chance. Someone to believe in them. Like someone believed in me, he said quietly. I looked up at him, seeing the softness in his expression, the contentment. This was not the broken, isolated alpha I'd met at the Harvest Moon gathering. This was a man who'd learned how to live again, how to hope, how to build something better than what he'd lost. We're going to need to expand the housing soon, I said. We've already filled the refugee quarters, and there are more applications coming in every day. Then we'll expand. We have the resources. He kissed the top of my head. Though I'm drawing the line at adopting every stray wolf in the territories. We need to maintain some boundaries. Agreed. But this is working, Cale. We're making a real difference. You're making a real difference, he corrected. You're the one who pushed for this, who's managing the program, who's giving these wolves hope. Don't diminish your role in it. Before I could respond, Finn came running up, his face urgent. Alpha Luna, we have a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? One of the refugees, the young male Darian, he's been caught stealing from the armory. Weapons, silver blades, things that could be used against us. Cale's expression went cold and hard instantly. The gentle mate replaced by the commanding alpha. Where is he now? Contained in the guard house. Sarah is interrogating him. Take me to him. Cale looked at me. You should come too. This is your program. You need to see this. We followed Finn to the guardhouse where Sarah had Darian pinned against the wall, a silver blade at his throat. The young wolf looked terrified, his eyes wide with panic. Alpha, Sarah acknowledged without taking her attention off Darian. He admitted to stealing the weapons. Claims he was planning to sell them, that he needed money to send to his sister. Is that true? Cale's voice was deadly calm as he addressed Darian. Or were you planning something else? Were you gathering weapons to use against us? No. I swear I would never. Darian's voice cracked. My sister, she's sick. She needs medicine I can't afford. I thought if I could sell the weapons to a trader in the neutral zone, I could get enough coin to help her. I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I swear on my life. You betrayed our trust, I said, my voice harder than I'd intended. We welcomed you, gave you safety, and you stole from us. I know, and I'm sorry, He looked at me with desperate eyes. My sister is all I have left. She's dying, Luna. I couldn't just watch her die. Cale and I exchanged a look through the bond, a silent conversation passing between us. Sarah, release him, Cale ordered. She looked surprised but obeyed, stepping back but keeping her hand on her weapon. Cale moved closer to Darian, his presence overwhelming in the small space. You have a choice. You can leave now, be exiled from the Northern Territory and never return. Or you can accept your punishment. 30 days in the cells, followed by 6 months of supervised work detail. And bring your sister here. We have healers who can treat her illness, whatever it is. She'll receive care, and you'll have a chance to rebuild your life. But if you ever betray us again, I will kill you myself. Do you understand? Darian stared at him in shock, tears streaming down his face. You, You would help my sister? Even after what I did? The Luna believes in second chances, Kale said, his voice still hard. I believe in accountability and consequences. You'll serve your punishment, but your sister will be cared for. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. I'll take it. Thank you, Alpha. Thank you, Luna. I swear I'll never betray your trust again. See that you don't. Kale nodded to Sarah. Put him in the cells. And send a team to retrieve his sister from wherever she is. Have our healers assess her condition immediately. As the guards led Darian away, I turned to Kale. Thank you. Don't thank me. I wanted to exile him, make an example. But I could feel through the bond that you wanted to give him another chance, so I compromised. He sighed. Though if he steps out of line again, there won't be a third chance. Understood. I took his hand. This is why we work so well together. I temper your harshness, you temper my mercy. We balance each other. We do. He pulled me close. Though I have to say, running a refugee program is more complicated than I anticipated. Welcome to Compassion, Alpha. It's messy and complicated and worth every challenge. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. I suppose it is. Now come on, we have a dinner with the council, and I'm starving. As we walked back toward the main hall, Kale's arm around my waist, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Yes, there would be challenges. Yes, there would be wolves who betrayed our trust or tested our boundaries. But we were building something here. Not just a pack, but a community. A place where even the broken and displaced could find healing and hope. And that was worth fighting for. 3 months after the bonding ceremony, I woke one morning feeling distinctly unwell. My stomach churned, and the smell of the breakfast Petra brought made me run for the washing basin. Kale was beside me instantly, holding back my hair, his concern palpable through the bond. What's wrong? Are you sick? I don't know. I managed between heaves. I felt fine last night. I'm calling for a healer. Within the hour, Moira, our head healer, had examined me thoroughly. Her face broke into a knowing smile as she concluded her assessment. Congratulations, Luna. You're pregnant. The world seemed to stop. I stared at her, my mind struggling to process the words. I'm what? Pregnant. About 6 weeks along, I'd estimate. You're going to have a pup. I looked at Kale, who stood frozen by the door, his expression unreadable. Through the bond, I felt a complicated tangle of emotions, joy, fear, overwhelming protectiveness, and something that felt like panic. Kale, I said softly. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. A baby, he whispered against my hair, his voice cracking. We're going to have a baby. Are you happy? I asked, suddenly uncertain. Happy. Alara, I'm terrified and overjoyed in equal measure. He pulled back to look at me, and I saw tears glistening in his ice-blue eyes. A child. Our child. I never thought, after Lyria, I never imagined I would have this. Moira cleared her throat gently. I'll leave you 2 alone. Luna, come see me in a week for another examination. And try to rest, the first few months can be difficult. After she left, Kale and I sat on the bed, both of us still processing the news. I'm scared, I admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if I'm not a good mother? What if... Stop. He tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. You're going to be an amazing mother. And nothing is going to go wrong, because I'm going to make absolutely certain you have the best care, the best protection, the best everything. This child is going to be loved and safe and cherished. We're really doing this, I said, a smile starting to spread across my face. We're going to be parents. We really are. He placed his hand gently on my still flat stomach, wonder in his expression. Our child. Part you, part me. Part of the bond the moon goddess gave us. I covered his hand with mine, and through the bond, I felt his fear transform into determination and fierce, protective love. We were going to be a family. Chapter 8. The news of my pregnancy spread through the pack like wildfire. Within a day, every wolf in the Northern Territory knew their Luna was carrying the Alpha's heir. The joy was palpable. Howls of celebration echoed through the mountains, and pack members I'd never spoken to stopped me in the corridors to offer congratulations. But with the joy came an overwhelming level of protectiveness that bordered on suffocating. Kale was the worst offender. He insisted I stop training with Sarah entirely. He wanted me to avoid the refugee quarters. Too much exposure to unknown wolves. He tried to convince me to stay in our chambers and rest, to let others handle my Luna duties. Kale, I'm pregnant, not made of glass, I said for what felt like the 100th time as he tried to stop me from attending a council meeting. I'm perfectly capable of doing my job. You're carrying our child. You need to be careful. I am being careful. But I'm not going to spend the next 7 months locked in a tower like some fragile princess. I pushed past him toward the council chambers. Now come on, or we'll be late. He followed, grumbling through the bond about stubborn mates who didn't know what was good for them. The council meeting was focused on winter preparations, ensuring we had adequate food stores, fuel, and medical supplies for the harsh months ahead. I participated fully, offering suggestions for organizing the refugee families to help with preservation and storage work. Halfway through the meeting, a wave of dizziness swept over me. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady myself, but Kale noticed immediately. Ilara. His hand was on my arm, his voice tight with concern. I'm fine. Just dizzy for a moment. That's it. Meeting's over. He stood, pulling me up with him. Sarah, handle the rest. I'm taking Ilara to the healers. Kale, I said I'm fine. But he'd already swept me up in his arms, carrying me from the council chambers despite my protests. The bond thrummed with his fear, his overwhelming need to protect me and our unborn child. Moira examined me again, and assured us both that occasional dizziness was normal in early pregnancy. Your body is adjusting to significant changes, Luna. It's to be expected. Just make sure you're eating regularly and staying hydrated. See, I said to Kale once we were back in our chambers. Perfectly normal. You can stop panicking now. I'm not panicking. You carried me through the entire stronghold like I was dying. I was being cautious. But his expression softened, and he pulled me gently against him. I'm sorry. I know I'm being overbearing. It's just the thought of anything happening to you, to our child. I know. I wrapped my arms around him. But you have to trust me to know my own limits. And you have to let me live my life. I'm not going to do anything reckless, but I'm also not going to stop being who I am just because I'm pregnant. He sighed, resting his chin on top of my head. You're right. I'll try to be less hovering. Thank you. He managed to restrain himself for exactly 2 days before the hovering resumed. As my pregnancy progressed, my body began to change in ways that were both fascinating and uncomfortable. My scent shifted, taking on a sweeter note that Kale found intoxicating, and that marked me clearly as a pregnant Luna to every wolf in the pack. My emotions became more intense, amplified by both pregnancy hormones and the bond. I cried at things that had never bothered me before. A warrior saying goodbye to his family before a patrol. One of the refugee children giving me a drawing she'd made. Even the sight of Kale sleeping peacefully beside me in the early morning light. Why are you crying? He asked one morning, waking to find me sobbing softly. Because you're so beautiful and I love you so much, and what if our baby doesn't like me? He blinked, clearly trying to process the logic, or lack thereof, in that statement. Our baby is going to love you, Ilara. You're going to be an incredible mother. But what if I mess everything up? What if I do something wrong and hurt them somehow? Then we'll figure it out together. He pulled me close, stroking my hair. You're not doing this alone. We're partners, remember? In everything. His steady presence, his unwavering confidence in me, helped ground me when my emotions threatened to overwhelm. The refugee program continued to grow. We'd accepted nearly 30 displaced wolves at this point, and most were integrating well into pack life. Darian, the young male who'd stolen from us, had served his punishment and proved himself trustworthy. His sister had recovered under Moira's care, and both siblings had become valued members of the community. But not everyone was happy about the program's success. At 4 months pregnant, I was walking through the market district with Petra when I overheard 2 older pack members talking. It's a disgrace, one muttered, not quietly enough. We're being overrun with strays. Soon there won't be anything left for true Northern Territory wolves. And the Luna, filling the alpha's head with all this compassion nonsense. She's made him soft. My father would roll in his grave if he could see what's become of this pack. I stopped walking, my hand instinctively moving to my rounded belly. Petra touched my arm gently. Don't listen to them, Luna. They're just bitter old wolves who resist any change. Maybe they have a point, I said quietly. Maybe I am changing things too much, too fast. Change isn't always comfortable, but that doesn't make it wrong. Petra smiled at me. You've brought compassion and hope to this pack. Anyone who can't see the value in that isn't worth your time. But the words stayed with me, burrowing under my skin like thorns. That evening, I brought it up with Kale as we lay in bed together, his hand resting on my belly where he could feel the baby moving. Some pack members think I'm making you weak, I said quietly. That the refugee program is a mistake. Some pack members are idiots. He felt the baby kick and smiled. Did you feel that? Strong kick. Kale, I'm serious. So am I. He shifted to look at me properly. Alara, there will always be wolves who resist change, who prefer the old ways. But the majority of the pack supports what you're doing. They see the value in it. And more importantly, I see the value in it. You're sure? You don't think I'm changing things too much? I think you're changing things exactly as much as they needed to be changed. He kissed my forehead. The Northern Territory was strong before you came, but it was also cold and isolated. You've brought warmth, Alara. Community. You've reminded us all that strength and compassion aren't mutually exclusive. I love you, I whispered. I love you too. Both of you. His hand moved gently over my belly. Now stop worrying and get some rest. Our child is going to need a well-rested mother. At 6 months pregnant, we received word that made my blood run cold. A messenger from the Moonstone Pack, my former pack, requested an audience with Kale. They brought news. Vivian Blackthorn, the beta's daughter who had tormented me for years, was petitioning to join the Northern Territory as a refugee. Absolutely not, was Kale's immediate response. She's not a refugee. She has a pack, a home, a position. According to the messenger, she's been exiled, Sarah explained, her expression grim. Apparently, she was caught stealing from the pack treasury to fund a gambling habit. The Moonstone Alpha gave her a choice: exile or execution. She chose exile. I felt sick, but not from pregnancy. The thought of Vivian here, in my territory, my home. We have to refuse her, I said. She's not trustworthy. She's cruel and manipulative and technically eligible for the refugee program. Kale finished grimly. If we refuse her solely because of your personal history with her, it undermines the integrity of the entire program. Other packs will say we're playing favorites, only accepting refugees we personally like. So what do? Kale thought for a long moment. We follow our own rules. She gets an interview, a thorough background check, and a probationary period like everyone else. If she proves herself trustworthy, she stays. If she causes any problems, she's out immediately. No special treatment in either direction. I wanted to argue, wanted to demand that he refuse her, but I knew he was right. The refugee program only worked if we applied its rules consistently to everyone. Fine, I said, but I want to be present for her interview. Wouldn't have it any other way. Vivian arrived 3 days later, escorted by Moonstone Pack guards to the border and handed over to our warriors. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner, her expensive clothing replaced by simple traveling gear, her usual haughty expression tempered by something that might have been fear or shame. When she was brought before us in the Great Hall, with Sarah and several council members present as witnesses, her eyes widened at the sight of me. Heavily pregnant, sitting on the Luna's throne beside Kale, wearing the silver collar that marked my status. Hello, Vivian, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. I understand you're seeking sanctuary in the Northern Territory. She recovered quickly, her face smoothing into a neutral expression. Yes, Luna. I made mistakes in my former pack. I'm hoping for a chance to start over. Tell us about these mistakes, Kale said, his voice hard. She explained, her voice steady, about the gambling, the theft, the exile. She admitted her wrongdoing, claimed she'd learned from her errors, said she was seeking redemption. It all sounded perfectly rehearsed. Why the Northern Territory? I asked. There are other packs you could have appealed to. Packs where you don't have a history with the Luna. Her jaw tightened slightly. Because I heard that the Northern Territory accepts refugees without judgment. That you give second chances to those who need them. Her eyes met mine, and I saw a flash of something, resentment perhaps, or calculation. I heard the Luna herself believes in compassion and redemption. She was using my own words, my own program, as a shield. And the worst part was, it was working. If I refused her now, solely because of our personal history, I would be a hypocrite. Kale looked at me through the bond, asking silently what I wanted to do. I took a deep breath. You'll undergo the standard probationary period, 6 months of supervised residence and work detail. You'll be housed with the other refugees, you'll work where you're assigned, and you'll be monitored closely. Any indication that you're reverting to old patterns, theft, manipulation, cruelty to others, and you'll be exiled immediately. No second chances. Do you understand? Yes, Luna. Thank you. She bowed her head, but not before I caught the flash of triumph in her eyes. After she was led away, Kale pulled me aside. Are you sure about this? We could have found a reason to refuse her. No. If the refugee program is going to mean anything, it has to apply to everyone, even people I hate. I place my hand on my belly, feeling the baby move. But I want her watched constantly. I don't trust her. Neither do I. Sarah's already assigned 2 of our best warriors to monitor her closely. For the next month, Vivian was on her best behavior. She worked diligently in the kitchens where she'd been assigned, kept her head down, caused no obvious problems. But I could feel her watching me whenever our paths crossed, could sense the resentment simmering beneath her compliant exterior. At 7 months pregnant, I was large enough that moving around was becoming difficult. My back ached constantly, my feet were swollen, and I was exhausted despite sleeping more than I ever had in my life. But I refused to stop my duties entirely, much to Kale's continued frustration. You're pushing yourself too hard, he said one evening as he rubbed my aching feet. You should be resting. I've been resting all day. I needed to check on the new refugee families, make sure they were settling in properly. That's what your assistants are for. I like doing it myself. It's important to me that they know I care, that this isn't just a program, but a genuine effort to help them. He sighed but didn't argue further. Through the bond, I felt his resignation. He knew I was too stubborn to be convinced otherwise. The attack came without warning. I was walking through the refugee quarters alone, against Kale's explicit wishes, but I'd wanted to surprise one of the children with a birthday gift. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Vivian stepped out of the shadows, her face twisted with hatred. Hello, Alara. Or should I say Luna? Her voice dripped with venom. Look at you, so pregnant and vulnerable. So far from your alpha's protection. My hand moved instinctively to my belly. What do you want, Vivian? What do I want? She laughed, harsh and bitter. I want everything you took from me. You were nothing, a nobody who worked in dusty archives. And now look at you. Luna of the most powerful pack in the territories, mated to an alpha who looks at you like you hung the moon, carrying his heir. I didn't take anything from you. You took my pride. She advanced on me, and I saw the knife in her hand. You made me look like a fool when you became Luna. Everyone back home whispered about how the pathetic Omega had risen while I, the Beta's daughter, was exiled in disgrace. I hate you, Alara. I've always hated you, and I'm going to make sure you pay. She lunged, the knife aimed at my belly, at my baby. I didn't think. I just moved, my training with Sarah kicking in instinctively. I twisted away, using my smaller size to my advantage, and caught her wrist as she passed. But I was 7 months pregnant, off balance, and she was desperate. We struggled, and I felt the knife slice across my arm, hot pain blooming. Then suddenly Vivian was flying backward, torn away from me by a force of pure fury. Kale stood there in his wolf form, having shifted mid-stride, his ice-blue eyes blazing with murderous rage. He had Vivian pinned under one massive paw, his teeth at her throat. No, I shouted. Don't kill her. He looked at me, and through the bond I felt the struggle, his overwhelming need to destroy the threat to his mate and child warring with my plea for mercy. Please, I said, clutching my bleeding arm. Don't make yourself a killer because of her. She's not worth it. For a long, tense moment, I thought he might ignore me. Then slowly, he shifted back to human form, keeping Vivian pinned beneath him. You came into my territory under false pretenses, he snarled, his voice deadly calm. You violated the sanctuary we offered you. You attempted to murder my mate and my unborn child. Give me one reason I shouldn't rip your throat out right now. Vivian was crying, all her bravado gone, reduced to a sobbing, terrified mess. Please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. You didn't mean to stab a pregnant woman? You didn't mean to attack the Luna. Kale's power flared, making the air itself feel heavy. You will be exiled from not just the Northern Territory, but from all 5 Pack Alliance territories. You will be declared rogue, with a standing order that any pack who shelters you will be considered our enemy. You will spend the rest of your miserable life running, alone, with nowhere to call home. That is my mercy. Be grateful I'm granting it. He hauled her up and threw her at the warriors who'd come running at the sound of the commotion. Get her out of my sight. Make sure she's across the border by dawn. Then he was at my side, carefully examining my injured arm. How bad is it? The baby. The baby's fine. I'm fine. It's just a cut. But my hands were shaking, the adrenaline finally hitting me. You're not fine. He swept me up carefully, cradling me against his chest. You're hurt, our child was threatened, and you were attacked by someone we welcomed into our territory. That is not fine. Moira patched up my arm. It was a shallow cut, more dramatic looking than truly dangerous, and confirmed that the baby was unharmed. But Cale wouldn't leave my side, his presence a constant wall of protective fury. I should have refused her, I said quietly as we lay in bed that night, his hand resting protectively over my belly. I should have trusted my instincts instead of worrying about being fair. No, you did the right thing. You gave her the same chance you gave everyone else. What she did with that chance is on her, not you. He kissed my temple. But from now on, you don't go anywhere alone. I don't care if you think I'm being overprotective. Our child is too precious, and you are too important to take any more risks. For once, I didn't argue. Chapter 9. The final 2 months of my pregnancy passed in a blur of preparation and heightened security. After Vivian's attack, Cale had tripled the guards around me, and I was never without at least 2 warriors within arm's reach. It was suffocating at times, but I understood his fear. The stronghold buzzed with activity as everyone prepared for the arrival of the heir. Nursery rooms were set up, filled with hand-carved furniture and soft blankets woven by pack members. Gifts poured in from allied packs, traditional blessings, protective charms, toys carved from mountain wood. At 8 months, I could barely walk without waddling, and simple tasks like putting on boots had become impossible without help. My emotions were all over the place. One moment I was laughing at something ridiculous. The next I was crying because I couldn't reach a book on a high shelf. Cale bore it all with patience I hadn't known he possessed, though I caught him hiding smiles at my more dramatic moments. This is not funny, I said one evening when I started crying because my favorite chair felt uncomfortable. Everything hurts and nothing fits right, and I feel like a whale. You're the most beautiful whale I've ever seen, he said, immediately realizing his mistake when I burst into fresh tears. I mean, you're not a whale. You're perfect and glowing and carrying our child, and I love you desperately. Despite my tears, I laughed. Nice save, Alpha. I'm learning. He helped me into bed, arranging pillows around me to support my aching back. Only a few more weeks now. It feels like forever. I know. He placed his hand on my belly, feeling the baby move. But our child will be here soon, and all of this will be worth it. I took his hand, pressing it more firmly against where the baby was kicking. Do you think we're ready? To be parents? Honestly? No. I think we're going to make mistakes and have no idea what we're doing half the time. He smiled softly. But we'll figure it out together. That's what we always do. I went into labor 3 weeks later, in the middle of the night, waking from sleep to a sharp pain that stole my breath. Cale, I gasped, gripping his arm. It's time. He was instantly awake, his alpha instincts kicking in. But beneath his calm exterior, I felt his panic through the bond. Are you sure? Maybe it's just. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, and I cried out. Right, definitely time. He was up and moving, throwing open the door and bellowing for Moira while simultaneously trying to help me out of bed. Don't worry, everything's going to be fine. We prepared for this. You're going to be amazing. Cale, you're panicking. I am not panicking. He was absolutely panicking, his hands shaking as he tried to help me into a robe. This is me being calm and supportive. Despite the pain, I laughed. The powerful, feared alpha of the Northern Territory was reduced to a nervous wreck by the prospect of childbirth. Moira arrived with her team of healers, taking control of the situation with practiced efficiency. They got me settled in the birthing chamber, a room specifically prepared for this moment, filled with soft light and the scent of calming herbs. Labor was long and brutal. Hours passed in a haze of pain and exhaustion, with Moira coaching me through contractions and Cale holding my hand so tightly I thought he might break my fingers. You're doing so well, he murmured, pressing kisses to my sweat-dampened forehead. So strong, so brave. I love you so much. If you ever, I gasped through another contraction, suggest having another baby, I will kill you myself. Noted, he said solemnly, though I saw the hint of a smile. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Moira said the words I'd been desperately waiting to hear. One more push, Luna. Your baby's almost here. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left and pushed, my scream echoing through the chamber. Then suddenly the pressure was gone, replaced by a different sound, the sharp, healthy cry of a newborn. "It's a girl," Maura announced, her face beaming. "A beautiful, healthy girl." Tears streamed down my face as she placed our daughter on my chest, this tiny, perfect creature with a shock of dark hair and ice-blue eyes, just like her father's. She was still crying, her little fists waving indignantly at being thrust into the cold world. "Hello, little one," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We've been waiting for you." Cale was crying too, silent tears running down his face as he stared at our daughter with absolute wonder. "She's perfect," he breathed. "Elara, she's absolutely perfect." Our daughter quieted at the sound of his voice, her tiny head turning toward him. He carefully reached out, his large finger dwarfed by her tiny hand when she gripped it instinctively. And in that moment, watching my mate fall completely in love with our daughter, I felt something settle in my chest, a deep, profound sense of rightness. This was my family. This was my home. This was everything I'd never dared to dream of. "What should we name her?" I asked softly. Cale thought for a moment, his eyes never leaving our daughter's face. "Lyra," he said quietly. "After my first mate, Lyria, but different. A new beginning, not a replacement. If that's all right with you." My heart swelled. "It's perfect." Lyra Stormborn. The pack's reaction to their new heir was overwhelming. Within hours of her birth, the courtyard was filled with celebrating wolves, their howls of joy echoing through the mountains. Gifts poured in from every corner of the territories. Traditional blessings, protective talismans, enough baby clothes to dress a dozen children. But for those first few days, Cale barely let anyone near her. He held her constantly, pacing the floors of our chambers at night when she cried, watching her sleep with an expression of fierce protectiveness mixed with tender wonder. "You know, you're going to have to let other people meet her eventually," I said with amusement as he carefully cradled Lyra while she slept. "They can meet her when she's 18, he muttered, making me laugh. "You're going to be an overprotective nightmare, aren't you?" "Absolutely. I'm going to terrify every male who even looks at her sideways." "She's 3 days old, Cale. It's never too early to establish boundaries." Despite his protectiveness, we eventually held a formal presentation ceremony where the pack could meet their heir. Lyra was passed from warrior to elder, each one offering their pledge of loyalty and protection. Even the refugees came, bringing small gifts and blessings. Darian, the young male who'd once stolen from us but had since proven himself trustworthy, brought a small carved wolf. "For the young Luna," he said, bowing his head. "May she grow strong and wise like her parents." As I watched my daughter being celebrated by our pack, by wolves from all different backgrounds who had come together to form this community, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and gratitude. We had built something beautiful here, something that honored both strength and compassion, tradition and progress, the old ways and the new. Lyra was 6 weeks old when we received an urgent message that would change everything. A messenger arrived from the 5-Pack Alliance Council, the governing body that oversaw relations between all the major packs in the territories. They were calling an emergency summit, and Cale's presence was mandatory. "What's this about?" I asked as Cale read the formal summons. "A rogue alpha named Victor Bloodmoon has been gathering followers in the eastern wastelands. He's building an army, claiming he's going to overthrow the Alliance and establish a new order." Cale's jaw clenched. "The Council wants to coordinate a response before he becomes too powerful. How long will you be gone?" "A week, maybe 2. It depends on how quickly we can develop a strategy." He looked torn, his eyes moving from me to where Lyra slept in her cradle. "I don't want to leave you both, especially not now. We'll be fine. Sarah will be here, and the stronghold is well protected." "I know, but..." He pulled me close, breathing in my scent. "The thought of being away from you too, even for a few days." "We'll be here when you get back," I promised. "Go do your alpha duties. Protect the territories. Keep everyone safe. That's who you are." He kissed me deeply, desperately, then moved to Lyra's cradle. He picked up our sleeping daughter, holding her gently against his chest, murmuring promises and blessings too quiet for me to hear. When he finally placed her back in the cradle and turned to leave, I saw the war playing out in his expression. Duty versus desire, responsibility versus love. "Come back to us," I said. "Always." The first few days without Cale were strange. The bond stretched thin with distance, leaving an ache in my chest that never quite went away. But I threw myself into my duties, managing the pack in his absence, continuing to oversee the refugee program, and caring for Lyra. Our daughter was growing rapidly, her personality already beginning to emerge. She had her father's intensity. When she wanted something, she made it known with impressive lung power. But she also had moments of quiet observation, her ice-blue eyes tracking everything with an intelligence that seemed far too advanced for an infant. "She's going to be formidable," Sarah observed one afternoon as she helped me with pack reports while Lyra napped nearby. "She has both your compassion and Kale's strength. The pack will be blessed to have her as their future alpha." "She might not want to be alpha," I said. "She should have choices." Spoken like a true Luna. Sarah smiled. "You've changed this pack for the better, you know. Kale too. You both have." Before I could respond, a warrior burst into the room, his face pale. "Luna, we have a situation at the eastern border. A large group approaching. At least 40 wolves, maybe more. They're not flying any pack colors, but they're armed and moving with purpose." My blood ran cold. "Victor's army? Unknown. But Finn has taken a patrol to intercept. He requests backup and your orders." Without Kale here, command fell to me. I stood, my mind racing through options. Gather every available warrior. Full defensive formation. No one approaches the stronghold without being vetted. Send a messenger to Kale immediately. He needs to know we might be under attack. "Yes, Luna." The warrior ran to execute my orders. Sarah was already strapping on her weapons. "You and Lyra need to get to the safe room. It's the most fortified position in the stronghold." "No. I'm not hiding while our pack faces a potential threat." "Ilara." I said no. I picked up Lyra, who'd woken at the commotion. "But I will take her to the safe room with a guard. Then I'm going to the command center. This is my pack too, Sarah. I won't abandon them." She studied me for a moment, then nodded with respect. "You're definitely your mate's equal. All right, let's move." I got Lyra secured in the safe room with 2 trusted warriors standing guard, then made my way to the command center, a fortified tower that gave a clear view of all approaches to the stronghold. From there, I could see the approaching force. Sarah had been right. There were at least 40 wolves, moving in organized formation. But as they got closer, something didn't add up. "They're not attacking," I murmured, studying their approach through the viewing glass. "They're retreating? What?" Sarah grabbed her own glass, scanning the group. "You're right. They're not in attack formation. They're in defensive positions, like they're running from something." Then I saw what they were running from. Behind the group, moving like a dark tide, was something far worse. A massive pack of feral rogues, easily twice the size of the fleeing group. These weren't organized warriors. These were savage, mindless killers, driven by bloodlust and hunger. "They're not Victor's army," I breathed. "They're refugees. And they're being hunted. Luna, we can't." "Open the gates," I ordered. "Get those wolves inside our walls now. And prepare for a fight. Those ferals aren't going to stop just because we close the gates. That's 40 unknown wolves. They could be dangerous. So could those children I see in their group." I pointed to the smaller forms being carried by the adults. "Open the gates, Sarah. That's an order." For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Then she barked orders, and the gates began to open. The fleeing wolves reached us just as the feral rogues closed in. Our warriors met the ferals at the gate, engaging them in brutal combat while the refugees scrambled inside to safety. It was chaos, snarls and screams, and the clash of weapons echoing off the mountain walls. But our warriors were well-trained and fighting on familiar ground. Slowly, they pushed the ferals back, killing or driving off the attackers until the last of them fled into the forest. When the gates finally closed, shutting out the threat, I allowed myself to breathe. Then I went down to meet the refugees we'd just saved. They were huddled in the courtyard, exhausted and terrified, many wounded. At their head was a tall woman with gray-streaked hair and fierce amber eyes. "Thank you," she said, bowing her head. "You saved our lives. We're the Mountain Ridge Pack. Victor Bloodmoon attacked us 3 days ago. He killed our alpha, slaughtered anyone who wouldn't join his army. Those of us who escaped have been running ever since." My heart sank. Victor wasn't just gathering followers. He was destroying entire packs, forcing wolves to join him or die. "You're safe now," I told her. "We have healers who will tend to your wounded. You'll be given food, shelter, and protection." "Why?" She looked genuinely confused. "We're strangers. We could be dangerous. Why risk your pack for us? Because it's the right thing to do, I said simply. Because no one should have to face monsters alone. Because this is what we do here. We help those who need it. She stared at me for a long moment, then her eyes filled with tears. Bless you, Luna. Bless your pack. We will repay this kindness, I swear it. As Moira and her healers began tending to the wounded, as warriors helped the exhausted refugees find places to rest, I felt the weight of what we'd just taken on. 40 more wolves to feed, to house, to integrate. And somewhere out there, Victor Bloodmoon continued building his army. When Cale returned, he was going to be furious that I'd made such a significant decision without him. But as I watched frightened children finally relax in the safety of our walls, watched parents hold their surviving family members close, I knew I'd made the right choice. This was who we were now, who we had always been meant to be. A sanctuary for the lost, a home for the broken, a light in the darkness. And I wouldn't apologize for that. Chapter 10. Cale returned 4 days later, arriving with a contingent of warriors from the Alliance Council. I was in the Great Hall, overseeing the integration of the Mountain Ridge refugees, when I felt him through the bond. A surge of relief at being home, followed immediately by confusion as he sensed the additional wolves in his territory. He burst through the doors, his ice-blue eyes scanning the crowded hall before landing on me. I stood from my seat, holding Lyra against my chest, and watched as understanding dawned on his face. Ilara. His voice was carefully controlled. Perhaps we should speak privately. I handed Lyra to Petra and followed him to our chambers, feeling the tension radiating through the bond. The moment the door closed behind us, he turned to face me. 40 refugees, he said, his voice still controlled but with an edge to it. You accepted 40 refugees while I was gone, without consulting me. They were being hunted by ferals. They're survivors of Victor Bloodmoon's attack on the Mountain Ridge pack. Children were dying, Cale. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to wait for me to return. You were supposed to at least send word, ask for my input. His control cracked slightly. Do you have any idea how I felt, returning to find my territory filled with unknown wolves while my mate and daughter were here, potentially in danger? They weren't dangerous. You didn't know that. You couldn't have known that. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Ilara, I trust your judgment, but you can't make decisions of this magnitude alone. We're supposed to be partners. You're right. The admission surprised him, making him pause mid-rant. I should have sent word, should have consulted you. But Cale, they were dying. If I'd waited for your return, some of them wouldn't have survived. I had to make a choice, and I chose to save them. He stared at me for a long moment, the anger in his eyes warring with understanding. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders dropping. You're going to be the death of me, you know that? Probably. I moved closer to him. But you knew what you were getting when you accepted this bond. A mate who won't sit quietly while people suffer. I did, didn't I? He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. Tell me about them. The Mountain Ridge refugees. I explained everything. How they'd arrived, the feral attack, the story of Victor's assault on their pack. Cale listened intently, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. Victor is worse than we thought, he said when I finished. At the summit, we heard reports from multiple packs. He's not just gathering followers. He's systematically destroying any pack that refuses to join him. He's building an empire on the bones of peaceful wolves. What's the Alliance planning to do? We're mobilizing a joint force. Representatives from each major pack, coordinating our defenses and planning a counteroffensive. He looked at me seriously. But it's going to take time to organize, and Victor isn't waiting. He's moving quickly, striking before packs can prepare. Then the refugees we save become even more important. They're not just victims, they're potential warriors, wolves who have every reason to fight against Victor. Cale's expression shifted as he processed this. You're right, the Mountain Ridge survivors. They'll want vengeance. And they know how Victor fights, his tactics. Exactly. We're not just offering sanctuary. We're building an army of wolves who have personal stakes in stopping him. He looked at me with a mixture of frustration and admiration. When did you become a military strategist? I've been studying your maps and battle plans for months now. Some of it stuck. I smiled slightly. You're not the only one who can think tactically. Clearly not. He kissed my forehead. All right, let's go meet these refugees properly. And Ilara, next time something like this happens, I'll send word immediately, I promise. Good. Because if Victor is targeting packs systematically, the Northern Territory might be next. And I need to know you'll keep yourself and Lyra safe when that happens. Over the next few weeks, the Mountain Ridge refugees integrated remarkably well. The woman who'd led them, her name was Rhiannon, and she'd been the Mountain Ridge beta before Victor's attack, proved invaluable in training sessions. She knew Victor's tactics, his weaknesses, the way he organized his forces. He's brutal but not brilliant, she explained to Cale and the War Council. He relies on overwhelming force and intimidation. But his troops aren't well trained. Most are rogues he's forced into service. They fight out of fear, not loyalty. That's a weakness we can exploit, Sarah noted, studying the tactical maps spread across the council table. It's also a danger, Rhiannon countered. Frightened warriors are unpredictable. They'll fight to the death because they're more afraid of Victor than they are of us. As we planned our defenses, more refugees arrived. Word had spread that the Northern Territory offered sanctuary, and desperate wolves made the dangerous journey to our borders. We couldn't accept everyone, our resources had limits, but we helped where we could, offering supplies and directions to other safe territories for those we couldn't house. The stronghold was more crowded than it had ever been, but there was an energy to it, a sense of purpose. Wolves from different backgrounds trained together, shared meals together, slowly became a unified force. Lyra grew through it all, reaching new milestones that filled my heart with joy and terror in equal measure. She smiled for the first time at 8 weeks, the expression so like her father's that I cried. She began trying to grab things, her tiny hands reaching for everything within range. Cale was completely besotted, spending every free moment with her, making faces to hear her laugh, singing old pack songs in his rough voice to help her sleep. "You're going to spoil her," I said one evening, watching him rock her gently while she drifted off. "That's my right as her father." He placed her carefully in her cradle, then pulled me into his arms. Besides, someone has to balance out her mother's tendency to drag her into dangerous situations. I would never. You already tried to bring her to a council meeting about military strategy. She was fussy. You were busy. It seemed practical at the time. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Despite the looming threat, despite all the responsibilities weighing on us, we'd found moments of happiness, of normalcy. But normalcy couldn't last forever. The attack came on a clear autumn morning, 3 months after Victor's campaign had begun. Scouts had spotted his army the night before. Nearly 300 wolves, moving through the mountain passes toward our territory. We'd had just enough warning to prepare, to send our non-combatants to the deep shelters, to position our warriors along the defensive fortifications. I stood in the safe room with Lyra and the other vulnerable pack members. Children, elderly wolves, those too injured or pregnant to fight. Petra was with me, along with 2 guards. Through the bond, I felt Cale on the battlements, his focus absolute as he commanded the defense. I felt his determination, his fierce protectiveness, his absolute refusal to let Victor's army breach our walls. "They're here," one of the guards said quietly, listening to reports coming through a communication system Gregor had rigged up. The wait was torture. I held Lyra close, singing softly to keep her calm, while above us the battle raged. Through the bond, I experienced flashes of Cale's perspective. Victor himself leading the charge, a massive alpha with blood-red eyes and a savage grin. The clash of armies, the screams of wounded, the desperate defense. Our warriors fought brilliantly. The Mountain Ridge refugees especially fought with a fury born of vengeance, their knowledge of Victor's tactics giving us crucial advantages. But Victor's army was enormous, and they kept coming, wave after wave, threatening to overwhelm our defenses through sheer numbers. I felt the moment Cale made his decision through the bond. He was going to challenge Victor directly, alpha to alpha. It was a desperate gamble, but if he could kill Victor, the army would likely scatter. "No," I whispered, even though he couldn't hear me. "Cale, no." But he was already moving, shifting into his massive black wolf form, leaping from the battlements into the heart of the enemy army. The battle that followed was brutal. Through the bond, I felt every blow Cale took, every wound that opened in his flesh. Victor was powerful, experienced, and utterly ruthless. They were evenly matched, 2 alpha primes fighting with everything they had, the fate of the territories hanging in the balance. I couldn't just sit here. Couldn't just wait while my mate fought for his life, for our pack, for our daughter's future. "Petra, stay with Lyra," I said, handing my daughter to her. Luna, you can't. Watch her. Keep her safe. That's an order. I ran from the safe room, ignoring the guards' protests, racing through the stronghold's corridors toward the battlements. I didn't have a plan, didn't know what I could possibly do to help, but I had to try. I reached the battlements to see Kale and Victor locked in combat in the courtyard below. Both were in human form now, circling each other, bloodied and exhausted. You should have joined me when you had the chance, Stormborn, Victor snarled. Your compassion, your weakness, accepting refugees, harboring the broken, it's made you soft. No, Kale growled. It's made me strong, because I'm not fighting alone anymore. He glanced up, just for a moment, and his eyes found mine on the battlements. Through the bond, I felt his love, his determination, his absolute refusal to fail. I did the only thing I could think of. I opened myself fully to the bond, sending him every ounce of my strength, my faith, my love. I let him feel how much I believed in him, how certain I was that he would win. The effect was immediate. Kale's power surged, the bond amplifying his strength in a way I hadn't known was possible. When Victor lunged at him again, Kale moved with inhuman speed, catching the rogue alpha mid-strike and driving him into the ground with bone-crushing force. You're wrong, Victor, Kale said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent battlefield. Compassion isn't weakness. Love isn't weakness. They're what give us something worth fighting for, something worth dying for, and something that makes us unbeatable when we fight for it. He ended it quickly, mercifully. A clean kill that left Victor's army leaderless. Without their alpha, the enemy wolves began to surrender, throwing down their weapons, begging for mercy. Kale shifted back to human form, standing in the center of the courtyard, covered in blood but unbowed. His eyes found mine again, and through the bond, I felt his triumph, his relief, his overwhelming need to hold me. I ran down the stairs, crossing the battlefield without caring about protocol or safety, and threw myself into his arms. He caught me, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe, his face buried in my hair. I felt you, he murmured. Through the bond, I felt you giving me strength. That's what made the difference. We're partners, I said against his chest. In everything, even war. The aftermath of the battle took weeks to sort through. Victor's army, once leaderless, proved to be mostly conscripted wolves who'd been fighting out of fear rather than loyalty. When offered amnesty in exchange for oaths of peace, most accepted gratefully. We sent them to allied packs who could use the extra hands, ensuring they were separated and monitored, but giving them chances to rebuild their lives. The territories began to heal. Packs that Victor had destroyed started the slow process of reformation. The Northern Territory's reputation grew, not just as a military power, but as a beacon of hope, a place where compassion and strength coexisted. My refugee program expanded, becoming a model that other packs began to adopt. Councils throughout the territories reached out, asking for advice on how to screen and integrate displaced wolves. Lyra grew, reaching 6 months old, then 9, then her first birthday. She took her first steps in the Great Hall with dozens of pack members watching and cheering. Her first word was duh, which made Kale insufferably smug for weeks. She'll say mama eventually, he assured me, laughing at my pout. She'd better. I'm the one who carried her for 9 months. She did 2 weeks later, and I cried happy tears while Kale grinned and declared her the most brilliant child who ever lived. Chapter 11. 5 years had passed since the battle that ended Victor's reign of terror. 5 years of peace, growth, and building something that would last beyond our lifetimes. I stood on the balcony of our chambers, watching the sun rise over the Northern Territory, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose. Below, the stronghold bustled with morning activity. Warriors heading to training, children running to their lessons, refugees who'd long since become full pack members going about their daily lives. So much had changed, yet so much remained the same. Mama, look what I can do. I turned to see Lyra running toward me, her dark hair flying behind her, her ice blue eyes sparkling with excitement. At 5 years old, she was a perfect blend of Kale and me, his strength and intensity tempered by my compassion and thoughtfulness. What can you do, little star? I asked, using my grandmother's old nickname for me. She concentrated hard, her small face scrunching up with effort, and then she shifted. It was her first full transformation, and instead of the massive wolf form she'd eventually grow into, a small gray pup stood before me, yipping triumphantly. Lyra. I dropped to my knees, tears streaming down my face. You did it. Your first shift. She shifted back, stumbling slightly, and threw herself into my arms. Did you see? I'm a real wolf now. You've always been a real wolf, sweetheart. But yes, I saw, and you were magnificent. Wait until Papa sees. He promised to take me hunting when I could shift. Take you hunting where? Kale's voice came from behind us. He'd clearly been watching from the doorway, his expression soft with love and pride. Papa. Lyra launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, swinging her up onto his shoulders. I shifted. I'm ready to hunt now. So I saw. Very impressive. He met my eyes over her head, and through the bond, I felt his wonder that this incredible child was ours. But hunting lessons start with tracking and stalking, not with taking down prey. We'll begin tomorrow at dawn. Really? You promise? I promise. Now go tell Sarah about your shift. She'll want to hear all about it. Lyra scrambled down and ran off, her excited voice echoing through the corridors as she went in search of our second-in-command. Kale pulled me into his arms, kissing me deeply. 5 years, he murmured against my lips. 5 years since you walked into my life and turned everything upside down. Are you complaining? Never. He rested his forehead against mine. You saved me, Alara. From grief, from isolation, from becoming a monster. You reminded me what it means to be human, to love, to hope. We saved each other, I corrected. I was just as lost as you were, just in a different way. We stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other's arms, the morning sun warming our faces. The council meeting is in an hour, he said reluctantly. Representatives from 6 packs want to discuss expanding the refugee network. 6 packs now? That's more than last month. Your program is becoming the standard across the territories. Every major pack is implementing some version of it. He smiled with pride. You've changed the entire culture of how we treat displaced wolves. We've changed it. This was never just my work. It was ours, together. The council meeting went well. The representatives, Alphas and Lunas from allied packs, shared their successes and challenges in implementing refugee programs. We discussed coordination, resource sharing, standardized vetting processes. What had started as my small project in the Northern Territory had become a movement that was reshaping pack politics across the territories. After the meeting, Rhiannon approached me. The former Mountain Ridge Beta had become one of my closest advisors, helping manage the ever-growing refugee program. Luna, I wanted to show you something. She handed me a report. The Mountain Ridge Pack has officially reformed. They've chosen a new alpha and reclaimed their ancestral lands. They wanted you to know that none of it would have been possible without the sanctuary you provided. My eyes stung with tears. That's wonderful news. There's more. They're naming their new settlement, Alara's Rest, in your honor. A place where the weary can find peace, just as we found peace here. I couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the gesture. Kale's hand found mine, squeezing gently. You've given so many wolves more than just survival, Rhiannon continued. You've given them hope. The belief that kindness exists in this world, that compassion isn't weakness. You've proven that the strongest packs aren't the ones that conquer, but the ones that protect. That evening, the entire pack gathered for the Autumn Moon Festival, a celebration of the harvest, of peace, of family. The great hall was decorated with fall foliage and glowing lanterns, long tables laden with food and drink. Kale and I sat at the high table with Lyra between us, watching our pack celebrate. There were original Northern Territory wolves and refugees who'd become permanent members, all mingling together without distinction. Children from different backgrounds played together, warriors trained together, families had formed across old pack lines. This was what we'd built. Not just a pack, but a family. A community bound not by force or fear, but by choice and mutual respect. Speech. Speech, someone called out, and soon the entire hall was chanting. Kale stood, raising his hand for silence. His presence commanded attention without effort, the powerful alpha who'd learned to balance strength with compassion. 5 years ago, I was a broken alpha, he began, his voice carrying across the hall. Isolated, convinced that caring was weakness, that love was a liability. I had resigned myself to a life of duty without joy, leadership without connection. He looked down at me, his ice blue eyes soft. And then my mate reminded me of a truth I'd forgotten, that our greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. That compassion and courage aren't opposites, but partners. That the bonds we forge in kindness are stronger than any forged in fear. He gestured to the packed hall. Look around you. 5 years ago, many of you weren't here. You were scattered, displaced, hunted. You came to us seeking safety, and you found family. You came as strangers, and you stayed as pack. Cheers erupted, howls of agreement echoing through the hall. This is our strength, Kale continued. Not our walls or our warriors, though we have both in abundance. Our strength is our willingness to extend a hand to those who fall, to offer sanctuary to those who flee, to build something bigger than ourselves. This is the legacy we're creating, not through conquest, but through compassion. He pulled me to my feet beside him. And this is all because of your Luna. Because she refused to accept that things had to be the way they'd always been. Because she saw a better path and had the courage to walk it, even when others called her foolish. More cheers, and I felt my face flush with emotion. So tonight we celebrate, Kale declared. We celebrate our pack, our family, our future. We celebrate the peace we've fought for, and the hope we've built together. And we honor the Luna who made it all possible. The hall erupted in howls and applause, pack members stamping their feet and raising their cups in tribute. Lyra tugged on my dress. Mama, they're all happy because of you. I knelt down to her level, cupping her precious face in my hands. They're happy because we all work together, sweetheart. Because your papa learned to lead with his heart as well as his strength. Because wolves from everywhere chose to trust us, to build something new. I was just one part of it. But an important part, Kale said, lifting Lyra onto his shoulders. The most important part. As the celebration continued around us, music and laughter and the joy of a pack that had found peace. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. I'd been the silent Omega, the overlooked girl in the corner, the one no one chose at the Harvest Moon gathering. I'd been convinced my life would be small, quiet, unremarkable. Instead, I'd found a mate who challenged me to be brave. I'd discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. I'd built a program that changed how the territories treated their most vulnerable. I'd become a mother to a daughter who would grow up knowing she could be both strong and kind. I'd become Luna, not because of some grand destiny or special power, but because I'd refused to accept that compassion was weakness. Because I'd chosen to fight for something better, even when it seemed impossible. What are you thinking? Kale asked, his arm around my waist as we watched the celebration. That I'm grateful. For all of it. The struggles, the challenges, even the scary parts. Because they led me here, to you, to our daughter, to this family we've built. No regrets. Not a single one. I looked up at him, this powerful alpha who'd learned to be human again, who'd chosen love over isolation, hope over despair. You. Only that I wasted 7 years afraid to feel anything. He kissed my forehead. But you were worth the wait. This life we've built, it's worth everything. Lyra, perched on his shoulders, grabbed both our faces and pulled us together. Group hug, she declared, and we laughed, wrapping our arms around each other, the three of us complete. Around us, the Northern Territory pack celebrated. Refugees and warriors, old families and new, all united under a leadership that valued strength and compassion in equal measure. This was our legacy. Not a territory won through conquest, but a home built through kindness. Not subjects ruled by fear, but a family bound by choice. And as I stood there, surrounded by the people I loved, the pack I'd helped build, I knew with absolute certainty that every struggle, every challenge, every moment of fear and doubt had been worth it. Because I was no longer the silent Omega hiding in the shadows. I was Alara Stormborn, Luna of the Northern Territory. And I was finally, completely, perfectly home. The end.